Chapter 40, 331. Theta Wang Chuan was still trying to curry favor. Shun Xiaojia looked at Theta Wang Chuan with a slight frown. Xiaojia, I know that you don't like me, but I don't care. As long as I can protect you at all times, I'm already very satisfied. Theta Wang Chuan said sincerely, and his voice wasn't soft either. It wasn't just the people in the hall. Even the people in the private rooms upstairs could hear him clearly. Isn't that senior brother Theta Wang Chuan's voice? Shun Xiaojia? Is senior brother confessing to Shun Xiaojia? 6 young men walked out from a private room on the 3rd floor. The 6 of them were dressed in luxurious clothes and had outstanding temperaments. The auras they exuded were also very strong. Moreover, each of them had a woman in heavy makeup in their arms. They were clearly here to have fun. It really is Senior Brother Wang. Looking at Theta Wang Chuan downstairs, the 6 of them didn't care what kind of situation they were in and laughed heartily. You guys are here too. Theta Wang Chuan looked up at the 6 and smiled. We just happen to be drinking here. Senior Brother Wang, are you confessing to Junior's sister Shen? The 6 of them were curious. Don't talk nonsense. Theta Wang Chuan glared at them with a very righteous look. But as he spoke, he secretly gave the 6 of them a look. The 6 of them looked at each other and understood. Junior sister Shin, look at how infatuated Senior Brother Wang is with you. Why don't you accept him? That's right. Senior Brother Wang is such a good man. He will definitely treat you well for the rest of his life. And when the 2 of you stand together, you really look like a match made in heaven. If you don't believe me, you can ask the others. The 6 of them laughed. In this world, there was no lack of people who would blindly join in on the fun. As the 6 of them finished speaking, many people in the hall began to join in on the fun. In the end, they even roared that they should be together, be together. The white-clad youth glanced at the 6 people on the 2nd floor and sighed. Little brother, do you see that? These are the disciples of the Demon Royal Halls. They're not working hard on their cultivation when they have such good resources. Instead, they all come to the tavern to seek pleasure. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the 6 people upstairs. They were indeed quite disappointing. What was the difference between these people and those hedonistic sons of rich parents who were idling about and abusing their power? Then he looked at Theta Wang Chuan. At this moment, he was very pleased with himself. However, when he noticed that Qin Feiyang's group of 4 were sitting on the side in silence, he couldn't help but turn his head to stare at them, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Together. The white-clothed young man and the white-clothed man's expression changed, and they immediately shouted. At the same time, he also signaled Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi to shout together. This is too childish. Lin Yi was speechless. It is indeed childish. You want an outsider to help you confess to a woman? Don't try to show off if you don't have the ability. Qin Feiyang shook his head. As soon as these 2 sentences came out, the whole scene fell into dead silence. The white-clothed young man and the white-clothed man's expression also changed abruptly. They quickly said secretly, Brother, what are you doing? Aren't you deliberately provoking him? Sorry, we will leave now. The black-clothed young man got up and looked at Theta Wang Chuan, whose face was gloomy, and smiled apologetically. Then he put down a pile of divine crystals, pulled Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi, and ran outside. Leave. Theta Wang Chuan smiled coldly. He stepped in front of the 4 people, stared at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi, and said, Make it clear who doesn't have the ability and who is trying to show off. Isn't this obvious to all? Qin Feiyang chuckled and asked, Would you like me to say another sentence to you? Don't be a toad, thinking about eating swan meat all day long. You don't have the strength. Damn it. Why are they still arguing with each other? Is he really not afraid of death? The guests around all looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. He actually scolded the core disciples of the Demon Palace as toads? The black-clothed young man and the white-clothed man were completely desperate. They had humiliated the other party like this. How could the other party still give them a way out? Yo, where did this little reptile come from? How dare he humiliate our Demon Palace's disciples recklessly? Accompanied by a strange cry, the 6 Demon Palace's disciples upstairs released the women in their arms and landed beside Theta Wang Chuan. The girls looked at Qin Feiyong with ridicule in their eyes, especially the waiter from before. He had no intention to dissuade them at all. He stood together silently and looked at Qin Feiyong with gloating eyes. Sorry, it's all our fault. We apologize. We apologize. Sirs, please be magnanimous. Don't lower yourself to our level, okay? Facing such a situation, the black-clothed young man and the white-clothed young man were very nervous. They kept hinting Qin Feiyong to apologize. There's no need to be afraid. Qin Feiyong smiled placatingly. Then he returned to the table and sat down. He looked at the 6 and asked, "You are also Demon Palace's disciples?" "That's right. How about it? Do you want to beat us up? Do you have the guts?" The 6 were extremely arrogant and fearless. They felt like they were the rulers of the Eastern continent. As Demon Palace's disciples, you are not cultivating properly in the Demon Palace, working hard to become the pillars of the Eastern continent, protecting the people of this continent. Instead, you come out to seek pleasure and bully others. Let me ask you, are you worthy of the resources that the Demon Palace gave you? Qin Feiyong asked indifferently. Haha. He actually said that he wants us to become the pillars of the Eastern continent, protecting the people of this continent. He must be talking in his sleep. We haven't even had enough fun. How can we be in the mood to protect unrelated people? Let's talk about this later. The resources were given to us by Lord Hallmaster. What does it have to do with you? The 6 kept mocking Xiao Qin. They looked at Qin Feiyong as though they were looking at a clown. I see. You guys haven't had enough fun. Then why did you guys enter the Demon Palace? Are you guys thinking of using the Demon Palace as your backing to bully others outside? Qin Feiyong's eyes had a hint of anger. What kind of people were they? They had given so many resources to nurture a bunch of irresponsible trash? No, these people were worse than trash. Are you done being arrogant? Fine. You said that we bully others because of our power, right? Today, we'll bully others because of our power. Kneel down and kowtow to me right now and apologize. Otherwise, we'll break your dog legs today. The 6 of them didn't hold back at all and were extremely arrogant. Is that so? I'm sitting right here. If you guys are capable, come and break my legs. Qin Feiyong's eyes flickered coldly. Do you think we don't dare? Theta Wang Chuan laughed sinisterly and shouted, Brothers, kill him! All right, kid, you're courting death. Don't blame us for bullying you. The 6 of them laughed and immediately surrounded Qin Feiyong. Are you guys done? However, at this moment, Shen Xiaojia, who was sitting at the table, suddenly stood up and stared at Theta Wang Chuan and the others. She said in a deep voice, Don't forget that you guys are disciples of the Demon Palace. What you're doing is ruining the reputation of the Demon Palace. Junior Sister Shen, what are you talking about? We're protecting the reputation of the Demon Palace now. That's right. This ignorant fool actually dared to humiliate us in front of so many people. If we don't teach him a lesson, who in the Eastern continent will respect the Demon Palace in the future? Theta Wang Chuan and the others said angrily, But you guys are the ones who started the trouble first. Shen Xiaojia's eyes were filled with disgust. Junior Sister Shen, I don't agree with this. We're disciples of the Demon Palace. What's wrong with criticizing him? If it weren't for the selfless contributions of the Demon Palace, would they be living such a peaceful life now? The few of them sneered. Bastard, I can't help it. Who doesn't know that the people who protect the Eastern continent and the Sky Cloud Realm have always been Qin Feiyong and the others? If it weren't for the few of them protecting us, would the demon palace have the glory it has today? Not to mention the powerful divine kingdom. Even the dragons, the foam people, and the Chelan race wouldn't be able to stop them. The black-clothed and white-clothed youths roared. These disciples of the demon palace were really shameless to the extreme. It was clearly Qin Feiyang and the others who had done the work, but now they were taking all the credit. They didn't even blush and spoke so righteously. Junior Sister Shin, do you see that? They're getting more and more presumptuous. If we don't kill them today, they might even ride on the heads of the demon palace and behave atrociously in the future. The few of them glared at Qin Feiyang and the others with undisguised killing intent. Don't you dare! Shin Xiaojia's eyes turned cold. She stepped in front of Qin Feiyang and the others and smiled. Don't be afraid. I'm here. The white-clothed youths looked at each other and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. A smile also appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. This little girl was still as kind and righteous as before. Xiaojia, Theta, Wang Chuan frowned. Shen Xiaojia turned to look at the seven of them and said coldly, "Get out of the way!" You, Theta Wang Chuan felt that he had lost face. Do you really want me to tell you to get out? Shen Xiaojia shouted. Theta Wang Chuan clenched his fists and turned to the six of them. He said angrily, "Get out of the way." Senior brother, the six of them frowned. Hurry up. Theta Wang Chuan roared. The six of them unwillingly retreated to the side. Let's go. Shen Xiaojia looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and said with a smile. Then she looked at Theta Wang Chuan and said, "Don't bother me again in the future because you don't deserve it." After saying that, he walked out without looking back. The white-clothed youth and the black-clothed youth quickly followed behind Shin Xiaojia. Brother Feiyang, what about us? Lin Yi looked at Qin Feiyang, who was still sitting at the table. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, got up, and took Lin Yi. He walked past Theta Wang Chuan and the others and walked toward the door. Wait. I will let you know the price of offending me. Theta Wang Chuan's voice came into Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi's minds. Lin Yi's eyes flashed with murderous intent immediately. Sigh. Qin Feiyang sighed and stopped. He turned to look at Theta Wang Chuan and shook his head. You have missed too many opportunities. What do you mean? This sudden sentence made Theta Wang Chuan somewhat inexplicable. It means that you have missed a lot of opportunities to survive. Boom, Lin Yi said coldly. In an instant, a terrifying aura burst out from his body. The entire Tianyue building shook suddenly. Theta Wang Chuan and the others spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out on the spot. End of this chapter. Chapter 40, 332. N. Shen Xiaojia and the two young men looked back at Lin Yi in surprise. The same went for the other guests and waiters in the restaurant. What's going on? Someone actually dares to make trouble in the Tianyue restaurant? Don't you know who is behind the Tianyue restaurant? The people on the street outside also stopped and gathered around the door to see the situation inside. Theta Wang Chuan and the other two smashed a few tables and chairs and rolled on the ground awkwardly. Then they all stared at Lin Yi, who was standing next to Qin Feiyang, in disbelief. Her aura is so terrifying. The young man in white and the young man in black recovered from their shock. They glanced at the embarrassed Theta Wang Chuan and the other two, and then at the murderous Lin Yi. Then they ran to Qin Feiyang and said in surprise, "Brother, your sister. My sister has a bad temper." Qin Feiyang chuckled. Lin Yi couldn't help but roll her eyes when she heard this. If I didn't feel your murderous intent, would I make a move? It's not a problem of temper, but her strength. The two were surprised and doubtful. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I forgot to tell you that my sister was born with extraordinary talent, so her strength is quite strong. When the two heard this, they looked at each other. Just quite strong. Isn't this too modest? This aura has definitely reached the strength of the great perfection dominator realm. They really misjudged. They didn't expect this so-called country bumpkin in their eyes to hide such a terrifying cultivation. When Shen Xiaojia recovered from her shock, she was also shocked. Although she used to live in the Shen family village, she had seen the world when Qin Feiyang and others fought with the king and the others over the Shen family village. At this moment, the aura revealed by Lin Yi was more than the great perfection dominator realm. It was comparable to the giants of the major forces. So, this brother and sister are definitely not a nobody, let alone a country bumpkin. You are presumptuous. How dare you make a move in my Tianyue restaurant? The waiter recovered from his shock and immediately glared at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi. Noisy! Lin Yi turned her head abruptly. An invisible oppression was overwhelming. The shop assistant spurted blood on the spot, flew out, and smashed into the counter behind. With a cracking sound, the counter shattered, and the wine jars on it fell to the ground. Reckless fool! I've tolerated you for a long time. Lin Yi glanced at the shop assistant contemptuously, then looked at Theta Wang Chuan and the others again. What do you want? We are disciples of the Devil Palace. Senior Brother Wang is a core disciple of the Devil Palace. The 7 of them couldn't help but tremble as they shouted in fear. Lin Yi sneered. Don't talk about you mere disciples. Even if your Demon Palace's law enforcers come, I will still kill them. Hearing those words, everyone present couldn't help but be stunned. Even the enforcers of the Devil Palace were killed. How much strength and guts did one need to be in order to say such arrogant words? What happened? What happened? At this moment, accompanied by a hurried roar, a figure hurriedly ran into the restaurant. The steward is back. You are dead meat. When the shop assistant saw this person, he immediately got up and smiled viciously at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi. He immediately ran to the steward and shouted, Steward, they're making trouble in our Tianyue restaurant. Making trouble in our Tianyue restaurant? When the steward heard this, he immediately raised his eyebrows and looked up at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi. A crooked stick will have a crooked shadow. You, steward, should be taught a lesson. Lin Yi's eyes surged with cold light, and an invisible coercion oppressed the steward. Puff! The steward also spurted a mouthful of blood and stepped back again and again. His face was pale. So strong! The steward's eyes trembled. After stabilizing his footsteps, he quickly cupped his hands and said, Tianyue Restaurant's chief steward, Li Si, greets this young lady. Although I don't know what happened, please calm down. Li Si. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Why does this name sound a bit familiar? Brother Feiyang, don't tell me you know him? Lin Yi transmitted her voice. This name is indeed a bit familiar, but I have no impression of this person at all. Qin Feiyang murmured. Lin Yi smirked secretly and said, Since you have no impression, then I will help you at Qing and Yi Miao teach these underlings a lesson. Qin Feiyang laughed involuntarily, but suddenly he stopped Lin Yi, looked at the steward suspiciously, and asked, Are you from Tianyue Restaurant in Qianshan City in the North Continent? And the steward looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise and asked, How do you know? It's really you. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Have you seen me before? Are you also from Qianshan City in the North Continent? The steward was suspicious. I am not. Qin Feiyang shook his head. In fact, he didn't know this person. He just heard demon ancestor, and others mention it. Li Si was originally not in the East Continent, but in Qianshan City in the North Continent. Qianshan City was a very small city. At that time, Li Si was an unknown waiter in Tianyue Restaurant in Qianshan City. According to Demon Ancestor and others, when the Tianyin Realm and the Divine Kingdom held a friendly competition, Ryuko and Jiang Yunchuang wanted to kill Demon Ancestor, Mu Tianyang, Dong Zhenyang, and Mu Qing, and send a young man to monitor them. As a result, in order to find their old enemy, Demon Ancestor and the others entered Qianshan City and found this person following them. They happened to enter Tianyue restaurant and met Li Si. At that time, Demon Ancestor asked Li Si to help tease this young man from the Divine Kingdom. This Li Si was really a talent. He took an ordinary jade bottle as a family heirloom and finally forced the young man from the Divine Kingdom to kneel and apologize in public. Seeing that this person was so clever, Demon Ancestor and others specially mentioned him when they met Yueqing later. It was because Li Si teased the young man from the Divine Kingdom and forced him to kneel and apologize that Qin Feiyang found it very interesting. So when he heard Demon Ancestor and others mention this matter, Qin Feiyang had a special impression of it. He just didn't expect that after not seeing him for so many years, such a young waiter would actually come to Cloud Sea City and become the manager of Tianyue restaurant. It seemed that this person's ability was really good, because if this person's ability wasn't good enough, even with the care of Demon Ancestor and others, Yueqing wouldn't have let this person manage the Tianyue restaurant. After all, the manager of the main store was below one person and above everyone else. Wait a moment. I believe Demon Ancestor and the others won't be wrong. Qin Feiyang secretly said to Lin Yi, and then looked at Li Si and asked, "As the manager here, don't you stay in Tianyue restaurant to look after it?" No. It just so happens that I need to go out for some business today. I usually stay in the store. But I didn't expect such a big thing to happen soon after I left. Please calm down. After I investigate, I will give you a satisfactory explanation," Li Si said. "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded, looked at Lin Yi, and said with a smile, "You explain to the manager how this waiter flattered Theta Wangchuan and how he drove us out of Tianyue restaurant." "Okay." Lin Yi nodded. She felt that it was completely unnecessary. But since Qin Feiyang wanted to do this, he must have his reasons. In fact, Qin Feiyang's purpose was very simple. He just wanted to see if this Li Si would deal with it impartially. If he would, Demon Ancestor and others really didn't misjudge. But if this person abused his position for personal gain, then don't blame him for being impolite. After all, he also contributed to the establishment of Tianyue restaurant. After a while, Lin Yi finished explaining the whole process. Li Si turned his head to look at the waiter. His face was full of anger. The waiter quickly knelt on the ground and said in horror, "Sir Manager, I was forced to do it. You didn't quibble." That really surprised me. Li Si's eyes were gloomy. When the waiter heard this, he couldn't help but want to cry. With so many people witnessing it, how dare he quibble? "Who forced you to do it?" Li Si asked. "It must be Theta Wangchuan. If I don't listen to him, I won't have a good time," the waiter said quickly. Li Si said angrily, "If you don't listen to him, you won't have a good time. Is he so powerful?" The waiter wanted to cry, but had no tears. Li Si said, "I don't want to hear anything else now. Just tell me, what do I usually tell you?" The waiter quickly said, "You said that when we do business in Tianyue restaurant, we must be honest and fair. We can't go against our conscience and treat the customer as God. You still remember? But what are you doing now?" The siblings are guests of Tianyue restaurant. They were bullied in Tianyue restaurant. As a member of Tianyue restaurant, not only did you not protect them, you even helped the troublemakers to drive them away? I want to ask you, who gave you the authority to do this?" Li Si shouted, "I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Sir Manager, please give me another chance." The waiter was terrified. "You ruined the reputation of Tianyue restaurant, and you want me to give you another chance? You should be very lucky that I didn't kill you. Get out of here right now. From now on, you are not allowed to take half a step into Tianyue restaurant." Li Si pointed at the door and shouted, "Sir Manager!" The waiter looked up at Li Si, his eyes full of pleading. "Get out!" Li Si shouted, killing intent flashing. The waiter shuddered and hurriedly ran out, tears of regret flowing down his face. although he was only a waiter in Tianyu restaurant. One must know that Tianyu restaurant had become the fifth force in the Sky Cloud realm. Even if he was just a small waiter, he could still get a lot of benefits. Moreover, as long as he was willing to work hard, there was still a great future. Just like Li Si, who was originally an inconspicuous waiter, but now he had become the manager of the main store, his status was second only to the two building masters. What kind of status and glory was this? But because of a moment's mistake, he lost all of this. Not bad. Qin Feiyang muttered, "I'm really sorry, both of you. I really didn't expect that my waiter in Tianyu restaurant would do such a thing. I apologize to both of you on his behalf." Li Si walked to the front of Qin Feiyang and cupped his hands and said, "It's okay." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and secretly laughed. Back then, the demon ancestor and the others really didn't misjudge you. You are indeed a talent. Follow Yueqing and Yimiao well, and they will not treat you badly in the future. Demon ancestor. Li Si's gaze trembled as he raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Moreover, he called the two building masters by their names. Who was this person? Chapter 43:33. Now in the Tianyin realm, only the dragons, Feng people, and Kirin clan dared to call the two tower masters by their names, excluding the giants of various forces. Could it be this pair of brother and sister came from the three major races? If they were from the three major races, then they couldn't afford to be negligent. Although the status of the human race in the Tianyin realm had improved with the help of Qin Feiyang and others, it was still far from the three major races. The most obvious difference was the foundation of the human race and the three major races. It would take many years to catch up with the foundation of the three major races. The shop assistant was expelled. Many people appreciated Li Si's approach, because at least it proved that the manager of the Tianyu building was not a person who fawned over the powerful. However, appreciation was appreciation. Theta Wangchuan and the others were still there, but they didn't dare to show it. After all, they were afraid of offending the seven people. Theta Wangchuan looked at Li Si, then looked at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi. A hint of resentment flashed in his eyes. He looked at the other six people and said in a deep voice, "Let's go!" He had nothing to do with the shop assistant, but in this situation, Li Si expelled the shop assistant, which was tantamount to slapping his face. He would remember this debt. Wait. But at this moment, Li Si stopped the seven people. "Is there anything else?" Theta Wangchuan turned his head and stared at Li Si. His eyes were burning with anger. "The next time you come to my Tianyu building, please remember to make a reservation in advance. Don't make such a joke again. Moreover, my Tianyu building is not specially open for your demon hall. Even if you are the core disciples of Demon Hall, in my eyes, you are no different from others. You are all guests of my Tianyu building. I treat you all equally. Also, let me give you a piece of advice. The next time you come to my Tianyu building, don't be so arrogant. Others are afraid of you Demon Hall disciples, but my Tianyu building is not. You will slowly understand the reason. When you leave, settle the bill, by the way." After Li Si finished speaking, he looked at the seven people expressionlessly. Others are afraid of Demon Hall disciples, but Tianyu building is not. This sentence was full of meaning. Li Si was indirectly telling the seven of them not to think about taking revenge on the Tianyu Tower, because the backer behind the Tianyu Tower was the same as the backer behind the Devil Hall, Qin Feiyang. Even the big shots of your demon hall have to be polite to the Heavenly Joy Pavilion, let alone you mere disciples. Theta Wangchuan stared darkly at Li Si. He took out a pile of soul stones and threw them on the table. Then he led the other six people and left without a word. After the seven people left, the surrounding guests could not help but give Li Si a thumbs up. In the meantime, the way he looked at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi also changed. This was a form of awe. Of course, there was also a trace of doubt. Who exactly were these siblings? A woman who looked so delicate and delicate actually possessed such terrifying strength. Once again, I'm sorry. Li Si turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang and the other man. He cupped his hands and smiled. I'm fine. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Shen Xiaojia walked over, bowed, and said, I also apologize to the two of you on behalf of the Devil Hall. This has nothing to do with you. After all, no matter where it is, there are always some black sheep. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Thank you. When I return to the Devil Hall, I will immediately report this matter to the law enforcers above. I hope the 7 of them can get the punishment they deserve. Shen Xiaojia said. Hope? Lin Yi was slightly taken aback and said suspiciously, they despise the creatures of the eastern continent so much. According to the rules, they must be severely punished to restore the reputation of the Devil Hall. Why do you say they are hope? It's a long story. Shan Xiaojia shook her head and sighed. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and looked at Shen Xiaojia with a smile. Theta Wang Chuan is not a good person. You have to keep your eyes open. There was a hint of concern in his words. Thank you for your kind reminder, big brother, but I have never had a good impression of this person. The reason why I came to the Tianyue Tower this time is purely because we are from the same sect. Shen Xiaojia smiled. That's good. Qin Feiyang breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that this girl would be bewitched by his sweet words. If there's nothing else, I will go back first. Shen Xiaojia said. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shen Xiaojia smiled at Lin Yi and Li Si again, then turned and walked away quickly. Brother, you are too disloyal. Your sister is so powerful, but you didn't tell us. You made us worry for so long. The young man in black and the young man in white immediately surrounded Yi Shiwen with a hint of displeasure. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Brothers, don't be angry. My sister likes to keep a low profile. I can't do anything about it. The young man in white pouted, glanced at the guests around, and asked in a low voice, Brother, should we continue to sit in the Tianyue Tower or go to the western continent now? Let's sit for a while. Qin Feiyang chuckled. But the young man in white hesitated. Are you afraid that they will find someone to take revenge? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. N. The young man in white nodded and whispered, This Theta Wang Chuan is not a kind person at first glance. We should stay away from him. It's okay. As long as I am here, they won't dare to mess around even if they have a few guts. The 4 of you can eat and drink without worry. Furthermore, to express my apologies, all of your expenses today will be on me. Li Si said. The young man in white was still a little worried. Since the steward said so, what are we afraid of? We can meet in the vast sea of people. Now, we have been through thick and thin together. This is the fate given to us by God. We can't let down God's good intentions. Let's go. Let's continue drinking. Qin Feiyang dragged the 2 of them and walked toward the table with pride. The 2 looked at each other and smiled helplessly. They could only sit down again. Lin Yi looked at this scene and couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. It seems that Brother Feiyang appreciates these 2 people very much. Li Si had been looking at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi. His eyes were full of suspicion. Who are they? After the 4 of them were seated, he looked at a few waiters not far away and ordered, Hurry up and tidy up the hall. While you're at it, tell the kitchen to add a few dishes and jugs of wine so that these 4 guests can eat and drink to their heart's content. Yes. Several guys immediately got busy. Calm gradually returned to the hall. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, 2 brothers, I haven't asked your names yet. Your names? The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Brother, aren't you making fun of us? We're just 2 little people. What's the point of asking for our names? Don't look down on yourself so much. Maybe you can become someone like Theta Wang Chuan in the future, or even better than them. Qin Feiyang smiled. Stop. I don't like to hear that. What do you mean by becoming someone like him? People with bad intentions like him will suffer retribution. The young man in white glared at Qin Feiyong with dissatisfaction. Ugh! Qin Feiyong was stunned. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Brother, you misunderstood me. I mean his strength. I believe that the strength and status of the two brothers in the future will definitely not be worse than him. It turns out to be like this. I thought you said that we will become villains like him in the future." The young man in white laughed dryly, pondered for a while, and sighed. But then again, although Theta Wang Chuan's character is not good, his talent and strength are really good. I am afraid it will never be possible to catch up with him or surpass him. Although we also want to make a name for ourselves, this is something that we know ourselves well enough to do. The young man in black nodded. So unconfident, Qin Feiyong was surprised. Both of their personalities and conduct were top-notch. The only thing lacking was their self-confidence. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyong smiled and said, if the two brothers can become an overlord one day, will you still fight for injustice and uphold justice like today? Of course. If you start to be selfish when you become stronger, how can you still be considered a powerhouse? The responsibility of the powerhouse is to protect the weak and maintain peace. The two spoke without thinking and hesitation. Their words were sonorous and firm. Qin Feiyong and Lin Yi looked at each other. These were the talents that should be cultivated. People like Theta Wang Chuan were just a facade. Lin Yi smiled and said, when the two brothers become successful in the future, don't forget us siblings. When the two heard this, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The young man in white looked at Qin Feiyong and shook his head. Brother, your sister took it seriously. Haha, who can predict what will happen in the future? Qin Feiyong laughed heartily. Lin Yi had not been so happy for a long time. She even accompanied the two young men to drink and teased. After talking for a long time, it seems that I didn't say your names. Are the two brothers some big shots? Don't dare to reveal your real name. Big shots? The two smiled bitterly again. The young man in white said, my name is Su Rin, and he is Fong Xian. We have known each other for many years. Although we are not blood brothers, we are no different from blood brothers. Su Ren, Fong Xian, Lin Yi pondered for a while, looked at the two, and said, your two names add up to Rin Xian. No wonder you have such good personalities. It turns out that you have good names. Good names? Su Ren and Fong Xian looked at each other, then looked at Qin Feiyong and shook their heads. Your sister is really humorous. Haha, Qin Feiyong laughed. This girl is indeed more cheerful than when she was in the ancient world. It seems that Little Rabbit has been well taken care of in Sky Cloud Island all these years. The young man in black, Fong Xian, said, don't just tell us our names. What about you and your sister? Don't tell us that you are nameless. We, Qin Feiyong and Lin Yi, looked at each other and smiled. We are really nameless. Su Ren's mouth twitched, and he said speechlessly, brother, you are a bit dishonest. We have already told you, but you still hide it from us. This, Qin Feiyong was about to speak. Boom! But at this moment, a powerful aura descended over the Tianhua building. There was a murderous aura in the aura. End of this chapter. Chapter 40, 334. This is... Su Ren and Fong Xian were shocked and immediately put down their wine glasses, because there were 7 auras inside. They were Theta Wang Chuan's group of 7. Obviously, they were here to take revenge. Sure enough, they came. Qin Feiyong was very calm, but in this calmness, there was a monstrous, murderous aura. Fong Xian and Su Ren didn't feel it, but Lin Yi clearly felt Qin Feiyong's anger at this moment. She also knew. Previously, Qin Feiyong didn't kill Theta Wang Chuan's group of 7 in order to test the attitude of the Demon Palace's management. At this time, these people came menacingly. They didn't seem to be here to apologize. Li Si also ran out in a hurry. Looking at Qin Feiyang's group of 4, he comforted. You don't have to be nervous. I will go out and talk to them. After saying that, he quickly ran out of the restaurant. When he looked up, he saw 10 figures standing in the sky. In addition to Theta Wang Chuan's group of 7, the other 3 were law enforcers of the Demon Palace. Their aura was very powerful. Let's go out and take a look too. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly, put down his wine glass, got up and walked out of the door. A cold light flashed in Linyi's eyes, and she also got up. Fong Xian and Su Rin looked at each other and quickly followed. Their faces were full of worry. It turns out to be the law enforcers of the Demon Palace. Li Si chuckled, rose into the air, and landed opposite the 3. He cupped his hands and said, May I know what brings the 3 of you to my Tianyue building? Don't ask when you already know the answer. Quickly ask those 4 reckless things to come out and accept their death. Otherwise, don't blame us for not showing mercy to the 2 tower masters of your Tianyue building. The 3 law enforcers said angrily and arrogantly. Li Si's eyes sank and said, The 3 of you, this is too much. I have investigated this matter. The ones who cause the trouble are the disciples of your Demon Palace. As law enforcers, shouldn't you discipline them? You don't need to worry about this. We will definitely discipline those who need to be disciplined. However, we will not let off those who offend the dignity of our Demon Hall. As for your Tianyue Tower, don't think that you can look down on my Demon Hall just because you have someone backing you. Back then, if my Demon Hall hadn't agreed to let your Tianyue Tower develop in the Eastern Continent, would you be where you are today? The 3 law enforcers sneered. Good. You guys are being unreasonable. All right. As long as I'm here today, no one can touch the guests of Tianyue Tower. Li Si roared. He had seen the changes in the demonic hall over the years, but as a businessman, he couldn't care less about these things. Who would have thought that they would actually bully the Tianyue Tower now? If they were to swallow their anger, wouldn't the Tianyue Pavilion have to kneel before the Demon Hall in the future in order to survive in the Eastern Continent? You. Don't overestimate yourself. Although you are the manager here, your strength is not even comparable to an ordinary disciple of my Demon Hall. If you know what's good for you, get lost immediately. Otherwise, even if we kill you now, Yueqing and Yimiao won't dare to do anything to us. The 3 law enforcers were domineering. Theta Wang Chuan and the other 6 were sneering. How dare these people overestimate themselves and go against the Demon Hall? Aren't they courting death? Wait, but at this moment, Shen Xiaojia hurriedly flew over. Looking at the 3 law enforcers, she said anxiously, I witnessed everything that happened in Tianyue Tower. It was indeed Theta Wang Chuan and the others who started the trouble first. You guys can't continue to be so unreasonable. Shen Xiaojia, what are you saying? As a disciple, aren't you a little lacking in manners to say that we, the law enforcers, are being unreasonable? One of the law enforcers glared at Shen Xiaojia angrily. Wasn't she trying to undermine him? But I'm telling the truth. If you guys continue to be like this, I can only look for Elder Hua. Shen Xiaojia clenched her fists. Even if you want to look for Elder Hua, you have to first punish these people who offended our Demon Hall's prestige. The 3 law enforcers' eyes turned cold, and their aura surged out. The Demon Hall is truly awe-inspiring now. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. Lin Yi stepped into the sky step by step, exuding a bone-chilling cold current. What are you doing? Brother, quickly ask your sister to come down. They are the law enforcers of the Demon Hall. They have the power to kill all creatures in the Eastern Continent. We can't afford to offend them. Su Ren and Fong Xian quickly looked at Qin Feiyang and said, It's okay. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. He also stepped into the sky and landed beside Li Si. It's them. Theta Wang Chuan pointed at Qin Feiyang and Li Si. Her eyes were full of murderous intent. Kill yourself, lest we have to take action. The three law enforcers looked at the two and said faintly, Kill myself? Qin Feiyang murmured. He looked at the three and said, As the law enforcers of the Demon Hall, you have the power to kill all creatures in the Eastern Continent. Is this how you deal with it impartially? How dare you humiliate the law enforcers? You really haven't died yet. Theta Wang Chuan laughed angrily. Lin Yi's eyes turned cold. She suddenly took a step forward and instantly landed in front of Theta Wang Chuan. What a fast speed! This seems to be instant time. The three law enforcers' eyes widened. It turned out to be the supreme profundity of the law of time, instant time. What do you want to do? Theta Wang Chuan panicked and quickly retreated. Lin Yi grabbed Theta Wang Chuan and returned to Qin Feiyang's side in an instant. Let him go. He is the core disciple of my demon hall. No matter who you are, as long as you dare to hurt him, there is no way you can survive today. The three law enforcers regained their senses and quickly shouted. Lin Yi ignored them at all. She raised her hand and slapped Theta Wang Chuan's face. *TCH, Theta Wang Chuan roared. But before he could finish his words, Lin Yi slapped him again. She was extremely strong. His teeth were scattered all over the floor. Awesome. Beating a core disciple in front of the law enforcers. I have never seen such a bold person. Moreover, it's a woman. The people in the city below were all dumbfounded as they watched. This was a complete slap to the face of the demon hall. Preposterous! Preposterous! The three law enforcers trembled with anger. The faces of the other 6 disciples turned pale. This woman's means were beyond imagination. Fortunately, they didn't speak before. Otherwise, they would be the ones getting beaten up now. Qin Feiyang looked at the 3 law enforcers and asked, Who is the person in charge of your demon hall now? And the 3 law enforcers looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Say it, Qin Feiyang said. Why should I tell you? Who do you think you are? The 3 law enforcers roared in fear. Although Qin Feiyang had no aura at this moment and looked like an ordinary person, the invisible oppression made it difficult for the 3 to breathe. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. Li Si looked at Qin Feiyang and whispered, Now the person in charge of the demon hall is the 3 hall masters. 3 hall masters? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes, they are the resource hall master, deacon hall master, and law enforcement hall master. Li Si nodded. Law enforcement hall master? Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi looked at each other and asked suspiciously, Isn't the law enforcement hall master Elder Hua? Li Si explained, Elder Hua has already given up the position of hall master. The current law enforcement hall master is the former deputy hall master. So that's the case. Qin Feiyang nodded, looked at Shen Xiaojia and said with a smile, Girl, go and invite your 3 hall masters over. Girl? Shen Xiaojia looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. The other party doesn't look old. Why did he call me a girl? Go quickly. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Okay. Shen Xiaojia nodded. She opened a teleportation altar and walked up. The other party's smile seemed to have an irresistible charm. He even invited the 3 hall masters over. What does he want to do? Isn't he afraid that the 3 hall masters will come and take his life? Everyone's faces were full of surprise. Fang Xian and Su Rin were also shocked. This brother and sister pair seemed to be more terrifying than they imagined. Stop fighting. I'm begging you. Theta Wang Chuan couldn't bear it anymore. She knelt in the void, looking at Lin Yi and begging. Her face was rotten. Her flesh was badly mutilated. It looked extremely tragic. Trash! Lin Yi smiled disdainfully and slapped her again. Theta Wang Chuan immediately rolled in front of the 3 law enforcers like a dead dog. The other 6 disciples quickly stepped forward to help Theta Wang Chuan up and hid behind the 3 law enforcers. Their faces were full of fear. The 3 law enforcers' faces weren't much better. Their faces were ashen, about 100 breaths. Teleportation altars appeared one after another. That's right, there was more than one teleportation altar. There were at least 50 to 60 altars. Following closely, one by one, figures began to appear. There were more than a dozen people on each altar. 50 to 60 altars meant a total of 600 to 700 people. Except for Xin Xiaojia, the others were all unfamiliar faces. Among them, 3 were the most prominent. All 3 of them were middle-aged. They wore gorgeous costumes with their hands behind their backs. They were like kings descending to the mortal world, exuding a domineering aura. The rest were all wearing the same costumes. Their aura was powerful and their eyes were sharp. They were all law enforcers of the demonic palace. Moreover, the aura exuded by these law enforcers was stronger than the 3 law enforcers standing in front of Theta Wang Chuan. Obviously, they weren't here to apologize. Why did they bring so many law enforcers? This isn't good. Fang Xian and Su Ren's faces were full of worry. Li Si's pupils couldn't help but shrink. With such a terrifying lineup, it seems that we must ask the 2 house masters to come back to deal with it. However, Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi didn't change their expressions from beginning to end. They looked at the 3 hall masters. Lin Yi was a complete stranger. However, Qin Feiyang more or less had an impression of the 3 of them, because he often went to the demonic palace in the past. He had occasionally seen these 3 people, but because of the disparity in status, he had never come into contact with them. He didn't even know their names. Lord Hallmasters, you have to uphold justice for this disciple. Look, what did they do to me? Theta Wang Chuan ran in front of the 3 hall masters and complained with grievances. The 3 hall masters glanced at Theta Wang Chuan, who was beyond recognition, and looked up at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi. You guys are too bold to touch my demonic palace's disciple. The person who spoke was the current hall master of the law enforcement hall. End of this chapter. Chapter 40, 335. I'm beating him because he deserves a beating. Qin Feiyang said calmly, Do you have to look at the owner before beating a dog? Hearing this, the eyes of the Deacon Hall Master and the Resource Hall Master instantly turned cold. Qin Feiyang said, Since he's a dog, shouldn't you, the owner, be responsible for him? He's really arrogant. The eyes of the 3 Hall Masters turned cold. The hundreds of enforcers behind them immediately swarmed forward and surrounded Qin Feiyang and the Deacon Hall Master. Qin Feiyang looked at the surrounding enforcers and could not help but sigh deeply. He turned to look at the 3 Hall Masters and said disappointedly, I thought that when you guys came, you would deal with this matter impartially. However, it seems that I've been thinking too much. You beat up the disciples of the Demon Hall. Now, we're executing you on the spot. Isn't this dealing with you impartially? The Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall sneered. Is this what you mean by impartially? Is this what Elder Hu taught you? Qin Feiyang looked at the Hall Master. Don't be presumptuous. The Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall was instantly enraged. Sai, you've betrayed Elder Hu's trust in you. Elder Hu, I gave you the position of the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall in the hope that you'll be able to protect the safety of the Demon Hall. However, look at the enforcers under you now. What have they become? And these disciples have been abusing their power outside all day. As managers, you guys actually turned a blind eye to them. That's not right. You're not turning a blind eye to them. You're indulging them and siding with them. Have you ever thought that if this goes on, the Demon Hall will be destroyed in your hands sooner or later? Qin Feiyang's current mood could only be described with one word, heartache. When the 3 Hall Masters heard these words, their eyes were filled with murderous intent. They shouted in unison, Kill this thief immediately and show the might of the demon hall. Boom! Hundreds of enforcers immediately unleashed a terrifying aura. However, at this moment, an even more terrifying aura surged out. In an instant, it enveloped the entire sky above the city. Anyone who was under this aura was unable to move. The 3 hall masters and the group of enforcers turned pale with fright. Li Si stood beside Qin Feiyang and felt it most vividly. Suddenly, the cultured and refined young man next to him seemed to have turned into a terrifying wild beast, causing people to feel fear and despair. This is his strength? It's indeed beyond our imagination. Below, Su Rin and Feng Xian were also dumbfounded. They knew that this little brother was definitely not simple. After all, even his younger sister was so strong. However, he had never imagined that it would be so terrifying. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Lin Yi and said with a smile, as a core disciple of the demonic hall, "You idle around all day, bully the people, and waste a lot of resources. What should we do with such a person?" "He deserves to die." Lin Yi spoke coldly. She stepped in front of Theta Wang Chuan and smashed Theta Wang Chuan's head with her palm. His soul was annihilated on the spot. All that was left was a headless corpse floating in the air. It was a ghastly sight. The eyes of the people in the city below trembled. Kill him just like that? As a disciple of the demonic hall, you spend all day in the restaurant, seeking pleasure and indulging in debauchery. What should we do? Qin Feiyang said again, "You deserve to die." As the cold word sounded, the other 6 disciples of the demonic hall splattered their blood in the sky one after another. Corpses floated in the air as blood gushed out. The void here had been dyed red with blood. The scene was extremely bloody. The people in the city were all dumbfounded. It was not enough to kill one, but to kill all of them. The siblings were challenging the demonic hall's divine might. Where did their courage and confidence come from? As a law enforcer of the demonic hall, you can't distinguish between right and wrong. What should we do? Qin Feiyang spoke again. This voice was like the sound of the bell of death. The 3 law enforcers who came first were killed on the spot. They even killed law enforcers. Everyone's eyes widened in anger. This was too crazy. The demonic hall's disciples and law enforcers were 2 completely different concepts. If the former was said to be provoking the demonic hall, the latter was equivalent to directly opposing the demonic hall. In the current sky cloud realm, who would go against the demonic hall? Even the foam people, dragons, and Chilants had to be courteous to the demonic hall. Where did these 2 people come from? After killing so many people, weren't they afraid of the demonic hall's revenge? Helping the tyrant do evil, helping the villain do evil, and not being fair. What should we do? The sound of the bell of death sounded again. At this time, the Cloud Sea City was dead silent. Everyone stared at the woman in white in the sky. She was like the god of death, killing law enforcers one after another. The hundreds of law enforcers brought by the 3 hall masters were all killed in just a short while. Looking at this scene, even the 3 hall masters couldn't help but shiver. She killed hundreds of law enforcers without even batting an eyelid. What kind of existence did they offend this time? Qin Feiyang glanced at the 3 hall masters, looked at Lin Yi, and said with a smile, "There's no need to talk about the remaining 3. Send them directly to hell and let them repent slowly." "Okay." Lin Yi nodded and took a step towards the 3 of them. "No, please. We are the hall masters of the demonic hall. If you kill us, Elder Hua and the others won't let you go." The 3 of them roared in horror. "No, Elder Hua, Chu Yin, and the hall masters will thank me for helping them clean up the mess." Qin Feiyang shook his head. The 3 of them roared unwillingly, but there was no room for maneuver, and they died on the spot. With the death of the 3 hall masters, everyone present felt like they were struck by a bolt from the blue, and their minds were rumbling, not to mention killing the disciples and law enforcers. but also killing the 3 hall masters? One must know. These 3 hall masters had a pivotal position in the demonic hall. Killing them would definitely cause the demonic hall to hunt them down. Why are you so stupid? Aren't you courting death? You can kill the disciples of the demonic hall, law enforcers, and the 3 hall masters. But can you kill the 3 overlords and 10 elders of the demonic hall? When these overlords come out of seclusion, where can you hide? There's no place for you in the entire Sky Cloud realm. Su Rin and Fong Xian were burning with anxiety. Why were you so impulsive? The wicked will be dealt with by the wicked. Why are you trying to show off? Xin Xiaojia and Li Si were stunned as well. Never had they imagined that the outcome would be like this. They'd thought that Qin Feiyong had sent the 3 hall masters to Ocean of Cloud City to resolve the enmity between them and avoid being hunted down by the demonic hall. But never had they imagined that he'd actually intended to kill them. Now they'd really caused a huge mess. No one could save this pair of brother and sister. Do you think it's over just like that? Qin Feiyong muttered to himself as he glanced at the corpses floating in midair, and then a cold glow suddenly flashed through his eyes. A moment later, one figure after another appeared in front of him. "Greetings, young master." It was Pei Tianhong, Wang Changyuan, and the other commanders of the Dark Guard who led the group. The 6,000 Dark Guards stood in an orderly manner behind them. Purge the demonic hall. Regardless of whether they're disciples of the demonic hall, law enforcers, or enforcement elders of the demonic hall. Kill all of them without mercy. Besides that, the Independent Cultivator Alliance, Sky Hall, and Divine Hall will do the same. Clean up this trash for me. Qin Feiyong spoke. Even though the Independent Cultivator Alliance, Divine Hall, and Sky Hall had a good reputation, there were definitely some people like that amongst them. Yes, Pei Tianhong, Wang Changyuan, and the other commanders bowed in response, and then they immediately led the 6,000 Dark Guards and vanished towards all directions while emanating a terrifying aura of slaughter. A merciless slaughter unfolded just like that. At the same time, Shen Xiaojia, Li Si, and many others in the city below were staring at the backs of Pei Tianhong, Wang Changyuan, and the others. Don't all of you think that they look very familiar? They do. They seem to be. Wait. They're Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan. The others seem to be former Dark Guards of the Blood Hall as well. But didn't they follow Qin Feiyong and the others to the Divine Kingdom? Why would they be here in Sky Cloud Dimension now? Could it be? In an instant, the gazes of everyone converged onto Qin Feiyong. Their eyes contained bewilderment, awe, surprise, expectation, and anxiety. In such a huge city, there was no sound at all at this moment. Qin Feiyong and Lin Yi looked at each other and glanced at the people in the city below. Lin Yi smiled and said, "Brother Feiyong, it seems that your identity can't be hidden anymore. When I asked old Pei and old Wang to come out, I already expected this outcome." Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. "Then you," Lin Yi asked. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and opened a space-time tunnel. He looked at Xin Xiaojia and smiled. "Girl, go back and ask Elder Hua and the others to come to Sky Cloud Island." After speaking, without waiting for Xin Xiaojia to recover, he raised his arm and grabbed in the air. Fong Xian and Su Ren below immediately rose into the air uncontrollably and then disappeared into the space-time tunnel together. Qin Dage, at this time, Shen Xiaojia finally regained her senses and hurriedly shouted, "Are you really Big Brother Qin?" "Yes, I'm back." At that time, come to Sky Cloud Island with Elder Hua and the others. Qin Feiyong's voice came out from the space-time tunnel. "It's really Qin Dage." Shan Xiaojia looked at the dissipating space-time tunnel, and her eyes gradually filled with a mist. After so many years, this familiar person finally came back. "I have to hurry and tell Brother De Zhuang." When she recovered, Shen Xiaojia immediately opened a teleportation altar. regardless of the corpses of the 3 palace masters. She ran up without looking back. Chapter 40, 336. The scene was still dead silent. It wasn't until Shen Xiaojia left for a while that Li Si finally reacted. He is Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang, the guardian of our sky cloud realm. He has returned from the divine kingdom. No wonder he knows my origin. No wonder he dares to call the 2 tower lords by their names. Ha ha! So it's him! The initial murmurs turned into laughter. He even cried tears of joy. Similarly, Li Si's laughter also woke up the people in the city below. Is it really Qin Feiyang? Am I dreaming? Brother, you're not dreaming. He just admitted it himself and asked the big shots of the Demon Palace to immediately go to Sky Cloud Island to see him. I was wondering who had the guts to kill the disciples of the Demon Palace, the law enforcers, and the 3 hall masters. So it's him. Ha ha! As expected of him, he can't accept any sand in his eyes. Those arrogant fellows of the Demon Palace are finished. Everyone was extremely excited. Who did the Demon Palace rely on to have today? Wasn't it Qin Feiyang, Madman Amo, and Golden-Winged Wolf King? If it weren't for these 3 lords, the Demon Palace would have been destroyed by the 3 major races. No, not to mention the 3 major races, the Blood Hall back then was enough to destroy the Demon Palace. Because back then the Alliance Master of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Divine Python couple were kidnapped by the Blood Demon. If the Blood Hall and the Vice Alliance Master's plot had succeeded, the Demon Palace would have disappeared from the Eastern continent long ago. Moreover, Qin Feiyang, Golden-Winged Wolf King, and Madman Amo were now the honorary Hall Masters of the Demon Palace. Just their status in the Demon Palace was equivalent to that of the Demon Palace's Hall Master. Just with this identity, he had the absolute strength to kill the 3 Hall Masters of the Law Enforcement Hall, the Deacon Hall, and the Resource Hall, not to mention a group of law enforcers and disciples. Theta Wang Chuan and the others are really blind. They actually provoked this person. If they don't die, it would be a waste of their stupidity. Look, who dares to be arrogant now? That's right. These scum of the Demon Royal Halls should have been dealt with long ago. Otherwise, do they really think that they can soar to the heavens? I can already predict that our eastern continent will soon return to an era of peace. Qin Feiyang is truly a great man. The crowd shouted. It was as if he had found a spiritual pillar. This was Qin Feiyang's current status in the Sky Cloud realm. The world revered and worshipped him. Very soon, the news of Qin Feiyang's return spread across the continents. This was like an unstoppable storm that swept through the entire Sky Cloud realm. Qin Feiyang. Grandpa, is the person they're talking about Qin Feiyang, who destroyed the Blood Hall, supported the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Devil Hall, and suppressed the dragons, the Foam People, and the Kirin clan? Southern continent, on a certain street, a 7 or 8-year-old boy asked innocently as he looked at an old man with teary eyes. Child, it's not just that. Back then, when the experts of the Divine Kingdom came, if it wasn't for this Lord Qin who led Madman Amo and the Golden-Winged Wolf King to fight at the front line, our Sky Cloud realm would have been destroyed by the Divine Kingdom. The old man rubbed the little boy's head and laughed hoarsely. Is it that powerful? The little boy didn't believe it. Child, you are very lucky and happy because you were born in this era of peace and didn't experience the difficulties back then. Back then, if it weren't for these lords who fought against the experts of the Divine Kingdom, I'm afraid we would still be uprooted from our homeland. The old man sighed. Are you talking about the Nether King's hell? The little boy asked. That's right. Back then, when the Divine Kingdom invaded our Sky Cloud realm, we were forced to leave our homeland and enter the Nether King's hell. Although it wasn't a long time ago, it was a painful memory that every living being would never be able to forget, because during that time, everyone was filled with despair. Child, you can't understand this kind of experience. In the end, it was Qin Feiyang and the other lords who bravely stood up and brought us hope, rebirth, and brought us back to our homeland." The old man laughed. The tears in her eyes fell down uncontrollably. The little boy looked at the sky with an innocent and bright smile on his face. "Grandpa, your grandson will definitely become a great figure like them in the future." "No, most of the so-called big shots are selfish people," Lin Feng said. "You have to learn from these Lord's breadth of mind, responsibility and responsibility. You have to protect the sky cloud realm and the people of the world as your own responsibility. Only in this way will you be respected, understand?" The old man lectured. "I understand." The little boy nodded. The old man nodded with a gratified smile. He looked up at the sky and said with a smile, "It's good that they came back from the divine kingdom alive. I hope the heavens will always care for them because they are truly good people." A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The return of Qin Feiyang and the others could be said to be shocking. The sky cloud realm, which had been peaceful for a long time, suddenly became lively. Even many people couldn't control their inner worship and admiration. Regardless of the obstruction of the Sea Beast clan, they frantically rushed into the Sky Cloud Sea. Sky Cloud Island, at the edge of the cliff, inside the pavilion. "Why did you come back so soon? And who are they?" Demon Ancestor, Feather Emperor, and the little rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi suspiciously, as well as Su Rin and Fong Xian standing next to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi had restored their true appearances. At this moment, Su Rin and Fong Xian felt like they were living in a dream. "It's really Qin Feiyang. It's exactly the same as described in the legend. There are also Blood Ancestor, Feather Emperor, and the little rabbit. These are all famous great figures in the Sky Cloud realm." Usually, they could only listen to the legends of these people, but they didn't expect that at this moment they could see the demeanor of these great figures so closely. And this is still Sky Cloud Island. As everyone knows, Sky Cloud Island is the holy land of the Sky Cloud Sea. Not everyone can set foot on it. Qin Feiyang sat on the stone bench, picked up the teacup, and shook his head. "I have some troubles. I'm not in the mood to continue strolling." "Troubles?" The three were taken aback. Qin Feiyang took a sip of tea, looked up at the three, and said unhappily, "Why didn't you tell me about the situation of the Demon Palace? Don't tell me you don't know." "It turns out to be because of the Demon Palace. Isn't this just a trivial matter?" The little rabbit waved her hand indifferently. "Trivial matter?" Qin Feiyang's face turned black. "You have to understand a truth. The peak of prosperity must decline. No matter how glorious the forces were, there will be a day of decline." The little rabbit said, "But the Demon Palace doesn't seem to have been glorious for long." Qin Feiyang was speechless. "But you can't manage the Demon Palace for the rest of your life. For example, your children in the future, they have to learn to be independent sooner or later." The little rabbit waved its paws with a very indifferent expression, because in this life it had seen too many forces rise and fall, so it was already indifferent. "All right, I admit defeat. I can't win against you." Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly, looked at Su Ren and Fong Xian, and said with a smile, "Brothers, come and sit." "Huh." The two of them panicked. "Sit. Don't joke. You are all so powerful. How can we dare to be on equal footing with you?" Su Rin hurriedly bowed and said, "Sir, we didn't recognize you previously and even called you brothers. If we have offended you, please don't take it to heart." Qin Feiyang was helpless. Indeed, once his identity was exposed, there was no way to chat normally. "Kid, who are they?" The Blood Ancestor looked at the two of them suspiciously. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Fong Xian, Su Rin, we met by chance at Tianyue Building." Met by chance? The Blood Ancestor and the other two were stunned. Wasn't it the first time they met? The first time they met, he brought them to Sky Cloud Island. What the hell was this kid doing? Previously, they thought that they were friends that Qin Feiyang had met in the Sky Cloud realm. Qin Feiyang was about to speak. Buzz! At this moment, a space-time passage appeared. A middle-aged man quickly ran out. It was He Zhongtian. Is this the temple master of the temple? Su Rin and Fong Xian were shocked. He Zhongtian looked at Qin Feiyang sitting in the pavilion, and a trace of joy crept into his eyes. He hurriedly flew into the pavilion and knelt down on one knee. Subordinate, He Zhongtian greets the young master. He actually knelt down. Su Rin and Fong Xian were shocked. Logically speaking, Qin Feiyang was the honorary temple master of the temple, and He Zhongtian, as the temple master of the temple, had the same status as Qin Feiyang. But now, not only did he kneel down, but he also called himself a subordinate. It seemed that some of the rumors were not groundless. Lord Qin was the honorary temple master of the three major forces, but in fact his status was above that of the major forces. Get up. Do you want to shorten my lifespan by giving me such a big bow? Qin Feiyang looked at He Zhongtian with dissatisfaction. He Zhongtian stood up and scratched his head. As a dignified overlord, he actually acted charmingly naive. If outsiders saw this, they would definitely be surprised. Buzz! Another space-time passage appeared. A beautiful woman in colorful clothes led two middle-aged men out. They were the three major forces of the Sky Palace. As soon as the three major forces arrived, they immediately entered the pavilion and knelt down to pay their respects. What the Fong Xian and Fong Xian were dumbfounded. If they did not see it with their own eyes, who would dare to believe this scene? All these years have you been well? Qin Feiyang looked at He Zhongtian and the three major forces of the Sky Palace and smiled. Under your protection, we have been well. He Zhongtian nodded and asked, What about you? What he said was true. If it were not for Qin Feiyang, the mad scientist, and the white-eyed wolf, the four major forces were nothing in front of the Feng people, the dragons, and the Kirins. We have been well too. Qin Feiyang smiled. Buzz! At this moment, another space-time passage appeared. Several figures walked out one after another. The Alliance Master, the Deputy Alliance Master, the Hall of the Exalted Hall Master, Yi Tian, Zhao Shaojin, the Shenmeng couple, the Fire Dragon, and the Black Dragon and Fire Luan, who were entrusted by Qin Feiyang to oversee the rogue Cultivator Alliance. Su Rin and Fong Xian looked at these people and could not help but gulp. Needless to say, the Alliance Master was an important figure who was respected by tens of thousands of people wherever he went. As for Yi Tian, Zhao Shaojin, and the Fire Dragon, they were like the sun in the sky in the western mainland these years. This was because they had opened the door of potential and also obtained the law miniature. Moreover, they had a time array that lasted 5,000 years. In addition, they were originally talented, so their strength had improved a lot over the years. Even their reputation in the sky cloud realm had caught up with the Feng people, the dragons, and the geniuses of the Kirins. So, many people of the younger generation knew them. End of chapter. Chapter 43-37. Qin Dage, good disciple. Good brother. A group of people appeared and ran into the pavilion. They looked at Qin Feiyang with smiles on their faces. Qin Feiyang also quickly got up. Looking at these faces that he hadn't seen in a long time, his eyes couldn't help but moisten, because everyone here had an inseparable relationship with him. He loved Zhao Shaojin like a sister. Yi Tian, Fire Dragon, Black Dragon, Fire Luan, and the others were like brothers to him. The Vice Leader was his teacher. The Alliance Leader, the Hall of Famers, and the Fire Python couple were all elders that he respected. These were Qin Feiyang's family. Brother, there's no need to say anything else. Just come back alive. Black Dragon transformed into his human form and turned into a coarse man. He stepped forward and gave Qin Feiyang a big bear hug. Thank you, Brother Black Dragon. Qin Feiyang wiped away his tears. No matter how much time had passed, everyone's feelings for him would not fade. Is third brother that popular? Little Rabbit muttered and looked at Qin Feiang. Fire Dragon bared his teeth and said, Uncle Rabbit, are you jealous? Or envious? Get lost. Little Rabbit glared at him. Qin Feiang looked at the alliance leader and the others and asked, Where are senior brother and Xiao Xian? They're accompanying Zhu Tianqing, Lu Jingyuan, and Elder Yu. The alliance leader smiled. I see. Qin Feiang nodded in realization. His future father-in-law indeed needed to be accompanied. Buzz! Another space-time tunnel appeared. The blood ancestor looked up and said with a smile, It seems that there won't be enough people here today. Now that the news of Qin Feiang and the others' return had spread, their former friends and old friends would definitely come to Sky Cloud Island one after another. This is Uncle Rabbit's territory. When did it become a place for him to meet his friends? He doesn't treat himself as an outsider. Little Rabbit complained unhappily. We're not outsiders to begin with. Feather Emperor chuckled. As the space-time tunnel opened, two familiar figures entered his sight. They were none other than Qi Shaoyun and the white-bearded old man. He seems to be. Su Rin and Fong Xian looked at Qi Shaoyun in surprise. Brother Qin. Qi Shaoyun laughed heartily as he walked over with his arms wide open. Brother Qi, how have you been? Qin Feiang also went up to him with a smile, and the two men hugged each other. Of course, they would stop when it was appropriate. Otherwise, people would think that they were gay. It really is the young patriarch of the Qilin clan, Qi Shaoyun. It is said that this person is the future master of the Kirin. Right now, the various large clans of the Qilin clan are all led by him. Fong Xian and the other man mumbled. This was too shocking. However, at this moment, another space-time tunnel. A gentle and refined middle-aged man walked out with a young man with an extraordinary bearing. Greetings, uncle. As soon as the middle-aged man appeared, Qin Feiang immediately stepped forward and bowed. This was because this person was Hua Wenchang, Huowu's father. You still know to come back. I thought you had died in the Divine Kingdom. Hua Wenchang looked at Qin Feiang with tears in his eyes. Father, what time is it now? Why are you still saying such inauspicious things? The young man beside him looked at Hua Wenchang speechlessly. Then he looked at Qin Feiang and said, Qin Dage, long time no see. You seem to have become more handsome. Is that so? You have a good eye. Qin Feiang chuckled. This young man was Hua Feng's younger brother, Pyrotechnic Glow. He was a young man who liked to drink. Right? I am the one with the best eye. Big brother, we haven't seen each other for so many years. Shouldn't you prepare a gift for me? Pyrotechnic Glow grinned. Qin Feiang was stunned and said, Go find your brother-in-law. Brother-in-law? Brother-in-law is back too? Why don't I see him? Pyrotechnic Glow was slightly taken aback. He quickly looked around and didn't see anyone. This? Qin Feiang glanced at the blood ancestor. The blood ancestor couldn't help but stare at the mention of the white-eyed wolf. What's wrong? Pyrotechnic Glow was suspicious. Nothing. Qin Feiang shook his head and waved his hand. Huowu and Li Feng appeared. Father. Old man. The two immediately ran to Hua Wenchang and the blood ancestor. What old man? Do you want to be beaten up? The blood ancestor's face darkened. Hee, with your old bones. I'm afraid you won't be able to beat me now. Li Feng grinned. The blood ancestor's mouth twitched. He looked at Li Feng and patted his shoulder. Not bad, as expected of my disciple. Of course. Li Feng smiled proudly. At the same time, Hua Wenchang, and Huowu were also constantly asking about their well-being. After all, they had been separated for so many years, and they had gone to the Divine Kingdom. They must have a lot to say. Fong Xian and Su Rin were already numb. Not only the Kirin clan, but even the Feng people had come. As expected of Qin Feiang, As soon as the news of his return spread, it attracted guests from all directions. Buzz! Soon, a space-time passage appeared again. The two looked up. Could it be the dragons? In fact, they didn't know that the dragons wouldn't come because Long Chun and Long Qin had already returned to the dragon nest. However, Qin Feiyang knew very well in his heart that it must be Elder Hua and the others. He also looked up at the space-time passage. Sure enough, the first to run out was Shen Xiaojia and Xinda Zhuang. As soon as the two came out, they saw so many people, and they were all overlords of the Sky Cloud realm. They couldn't help but be stunned. Then they suppressed their excitement and stepped forward to bow to each of them. The giants were naturally no stranger to Shen Xiaojia and Xinda Zhuang. Furthermore, they were full of praises for their talents. Of course, everyone knew that whether it was Shen Xiaojia or the others in the Shen family village, it was all because of Qin Feiyang that they could have today. After bowing to the giants, the two ran to Qin Feiyang. They were so excited that they couldn't speak, especially Xinda Zhuang, because Qin Feiyang not only changed the fate of the Shen family village, but also extended the life of his grandfather, Shen Mulin. Otherwise, Shen Mulin would have turned into a pile of yellow soil. Therefore, he not only respected Qin Feiyang, but also felt grateful. Just the two of you? Qin Feiyang asked. Just us for the time being. Shen Xiaojia nodded. What about Elder Hua and the others? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Shen Xiaojia hesitated and sighed. After they came out of seclusion, they found it hard to imagine the current situation in the Devil Palace, so they personally went to investigate. I see. Qin Feiyang was enlightened. Naturally, there was no need to doubt Elder Hua, Chu Yin and the Devil Palace's Hall Master. After all, their contributions to the Devil Palace and their sense of responsibility were obvious to all. One could only say that they had trusted the wrong person this time, handing such a heavy responsibility to the three Hall Masters. There were too many people, and the pavilion could no longer accommodate them. Everyone gathered on the flat ground at the top of the mountain and sat in a circle. Fang Xian and Su Rin sat silently at the side, not even daring to breathe loudly. Qi Xiaoyan smiled and said, Brother Qin, you've caused such a huge commotion the moment you returned. This is really in line with your character. Do you think I want to do that? Asked Big Brother, the ancestor, and the ancestor. Didn't I tell them not to leak the news of our return? I didn't want to cause such a commotion. But there's no other way. It's hard not to be angry at the actions of the Devil Palace's disciples. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. The Devil Palace has been too arrogant in recent years. Qi Xiaoyan smiled. The others nodded silently. Qin Feiyang said helplessly, Then why did you all just sit back and do nothing? Do we dare to do anything? The Devil Palace is backed by you. Hu Wenchang chuckled. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. This reason was really irrefutable. Whoosh! At this time, another space-time tunnel appeared. A group of people filed out. They thought it would be Elder Hua and the others, but it turned out to be the 4 guardian beasts, the Sea Lion Emperor, and the other beast emperors. How could this be? Everyone stood up one after another to welcome them, and the ones to welcome them were naturally the 4 guardian beasts. The 4 guardian beasts had not only guarded the Sky Cloud realm for many years, but they were also the teachers of the Human Emperor and the Feather Emperor. Therefore, their status in the Sky Cloud realm was not to be underestimated. You're back. The young man smiled hoarsely, looking at Qin Feiyang with a kind gaze. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, I'm sorry to have made the 4 seniors worry. Who asked us to be so useless? We can only worry silently in the Sky Cloud realm. Vermilion Bird shook her head and sighed. Look at what you're saying. In the past, if it weren't for the 4 of you selflessly guarding this land, how could there be today's Sky Cloud realm? And there wouldn't be a stage for us juniors to show our talents. Qin Feiyang smiled. No one could erase the dedication of the 4 guardian beasts to the sky cloud realm. No one was qualified to judge them. You brat, your mouth is as sweet as honey. Let's sit down and talk. Don't just stand there. Azure Dragon chuckled. Qin Feiyang looked at this happy scene with a smile on his face. Then he turned to look at the Sea Lion Emperor and the other beast emperors. He chuckled and said, "Seniors, have you finished the wine I gave you?" Ah. The group of beast emperors looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. As soon as they met, he asked them if they had finished the wine. Could it be that in this kid's eyes they were all drunkards? Qin Feiyang whispered, "This time when I came back from the Divine Kingdom, I brought back a lot of divine wine, and even a lot of top-grade divine wine." Really? The beast emperor's eyes lit up. Some of the beast emperors were even drooling. Qin Feiyang said, "But they're all in Big Brother's hands." "What? You gave them all to him?" "Then what are you saying now? It's not like you don't know that damn rabbit's character." "Other things are fine, but divine wine, once it falls into his hands, can we still snatch it?" The group of beast emperors looked at Qin Feiyang with resentment. "Such a good thing, and you only think of your big brother. Too heartless." "Ha! That depends on your ability." Qin Feiyang laughed, walked to the side of Feather Emperor, sat down and chatted with everyone. The Sea Lion Emperor and the other beast emperors walked over and stared at the little rabbit. At this moment, the fearless little rabbit couldn't help but feel her scalp tingle. End of chapter. Chapter 40, 338. The time spent together was very happy, especially the friends who had gone through life and death together. However, no matter who it was, Qin Feiyang never mentioned the Divine Kingdom to anyone, because this pressure and responsibility could be shouldered by him, the mad scientist, and the others. There was no need to drag others into it. Time passed quietly. About an hour passed. Buzz! Along with a space-time tunnel, Elder Hua, Chu Yin, and the Demon Hall Master finally arrived. Looking at the group of people sitting on the mountain peak, the 3 of them were both happy and sad. They were happy that Qin Feiyang and the others had returned alive. This was because they treated Qin Feiyang, the mad scientist, and the white-eyed wolf as their own juniors. Although they had been in seclusion all these years, they often thought of Qin Feiyang and the others who were fighting in the Divine Kingdom. They wondered if they were in danger. Were they doing well? They put down the matters of the Demon Hall and cultivated in seclusion with all their might. They wanted to become stronger so that they could help Qin Feiyang and the others share some of the pressure in the future. They were sad because they had worked so hard to lead the Demon Hall to an unprecedented peak and glory, but now they had become like this. Although it was not their fault, they were also responsible. This was because they had personally handed over the management of the Demon Hall to the 3 Hall Masters. At this moment, they felt very guilty. The Demon Hall was able to achieve its current status because of Qin Feiyang and the others. But now, they had let down Qin Feiyang and the others. They could understand Qin Feiyang's current feelings. He must be very disappointed. Qin Feiyang stood up and greeted them with a smile. "Elder Hua, Hall Master, Miss Chu Yin, long time no see." The 3 of them looked at each other and lowered their heads. They were a little embarrassed. Qin Feiyang comforted them. "The 3 of you don't have to be like this. This has nothing to do with you. Don't comfort us." Elder Hua raised his head and looked at the Alliance Master, Hizhongtian, the Sky Palace Hall Master, and the other big shots on the mountain peak. He sighed and said, "We are all managing a continent, but compared to them we are really ashamed." In the past hour, they had not only investigated the current situation of the Devil Hall, but also the current situation of the Rogue, Cultivator Alliance, Sky Hall, and Deities Hall. Compared to the current Rogue, Cultivator Alliance, Sky Hall, and Deity Hall, their Demon Hall was simply too inferior. Although the ones at fault are the 3 Palace Masters, we can't escape the responsibility either. We shouldn't have gone into seclusion and should have come out occasionally to supervise. Chu Yin sighed, her face full of self-blame. It could be said that as the vice hall master, she was more upset than anyone else that the demonic hall had fallen to such a state. This was because she had always treated the demonic palace as her home. Indeed, when she was very young, she had already entered the Devil Hall and had always lived there. The Devil Hall had long become an inseparable part of her life. With this lesson, I'll pay more attention in the future. Come on, let's sit down and talk. Moreover, I even selected 2 promising geniuses for the Devil Hall during this trip to the city. Qin Feiyong smiled. Promising geniuses? The 3 of them were stunned. Yes, Qin Feiyong nodded. He's not talking about us, right? Fang Xian and Su Ren exchanged glances, and they couldn't help but feel slight anticipation and nervousness in their hearts. Elder Hu gazed at Qin Feiyong and asked, "Are you really not angry?" "I'm angry. After all, I have feelings for the Devil Hall as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked Old Pei and Old Wang to lead 6,000 shadow guards to clean up the Devil Hall. However, I'm not someone who can't differentiate right from wrong. Moreover, this isn't something that all of you want to see happen, because all of you definitely want the Devil Hall to become better and better. But in the future, all of you really have to keep your eyes open and hand over the authority in your hands to someone you can truly trust." Qin Feiyong smiled. "Thank you." Elder Hua and the others gazed at Qin Feiyong with gratitude. With this sentence, their nervous hearts could be calmed down. Frankly speaking, now that they were facing Qin Feiyong, they still felt a lot of pressure. This was because the current Qin Feiyong, be it in terms of strength or status, was no longer the young man from back then. It was no exaggeration to say that. Now, Qin Feiyong could destroy a force with just a casual word. "Old friend, don't blame yourself. Just be more careful next time." The Alliance Master looked at Elder Hua, who was walking over, and chuckled. "How can I let you see such a big joke?" Elder Hua pursed his lips. "Haha!" The Alliance Master couldn't help but laugh. Elder Hua glared at the Alliance Master and scanned the surroundings. He turned to look at Qin Feiyong and asked suspiciously, "Where are the few of them?" "Senior Brother and Xiao Xian are in the western mainland. Long Chen and Long Qin have already returned to the dragon nest. As for the white-eyed wolf, I don't know where he went. Don't bother about him." Qin Feiyong waved his hand and smiled. Elder Hua said, "So, all of you returned this time?" "Yes." Qin Feiyong smiled. "Good." Elder Hua nodded happily. Nothing could make him happier than this. Chu Yun asked, "Then the Divine Kingdom now?" Qin Feiyong smiled and said, "Let's not talk about the Divine Kingdom. It's rare for us to get together, so let's talk about our daily lives." Chu Yun's expression froze. These words could be said to have a deeper meaning. The others could not help but look at each other. It seemed that the Divine Kingdom's matter was not over yet. "Brothers, come here." Qin Feiyong waved at Fang Xian and Su Rin. The 2 of them looked at each other, immediately got up and walked to Qin Feiyong's side. Qin Feiyong looked at Elder Hua and smiled. "The 2 talents I mentioned just now are them. One of them is called Fang Xian, and the other is called Su Rin." Not only Elder Hua, but the others also looked at Su Rin and Fang Xian. They knew Qin Feiyong too well. Those who could be valued by Qin Feiyong were definitely not bad. I met them in Tianyua Tower before. I've tested their character, and they're quite good. They originally planned to go to the Rogue Cultivators Alliance in the Western Continent, but I think the Demonic Palace needs talents like them now, so I'll hand them over to you now. Qin Feiyong looked at Elder Hua and smiled. "So, they're going to the Rogue Cultivators Alliance." The Alliance Master, Deputy Alliance Master, and Hall Master of the Hall of the Exalted were stunned. When they came back to their senses, the Deputy Alliance Master immediately glared at Qin Feiyong and scolded, "Brat, you're poaching our people." "Absolutely not." Qin Feiyong hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Master, they're originally from the Eastern Continent. It's because the Demonic Palace has been overbearing these years that they can't stand their behavior. so they're going to the Rogue Cultivators Alliance. Then let them go. What do you mean by intercepting them halfway? This water has to be balanced. The Hall of the Exalted Hall Master also glared at Qin Feiyang with dissatisfaction. Since Qin Feiyang thought highly of them and even personally determined that the two of them were moldable talents, they would definitely have great achievements in the future. They couldn't just hand over such talents to the demonic palace. Hey, what's wrong with you? Are there no talents in the Western continent? Why do you have to come to our Eastern continent to snatch them? Elder Hu glared at the two of them. Talents don't discriminate between countries. Besides, the demonic palace has only yourselves to blame. The Alliance Master finally spoke. Since they're talents, how can we let the demonic palace get them so easily? Hearing this, Elder Hu glared at the Alliance Master angrily, but he couldn't refute. That was because it was the truth. According to their previous investigation, the demonic palace had indeed lost many talents over the years, and those talents had all gone to the Rogue Cultivators Alliance, the Temple of Gods, and the Heavenly Palace. We're all old friends, so why do you have to fight? Why don't you let them go to the Temple of Gods, lest the demonic palace and the Rogue Cultivators Alliance get into a fight and hurt our friendship? He Zhongtian chuckled. Then shouldn't we thank you? The leaders of the demonic palace and the Rogue Cultivators Alliance glared at He Zhongtian. We're all on the same side. Don't be so polite. He Zhongtian also looked like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. The leaders rolled their eyes. Actually, the Heavenly Palace is also very good. The Temple Master of the Heavenly Palace suddenly spoke. Everyone was stunned, especially Su Ren and Fong Xian. They looked at each other. They were two ordinary people, but they didn't expect that they would become the hotcakes that the four major forces were fighting over. Was this Qin Feiyang's current status in the Sky Cloud realm? As long as he took a fancy to someone, even if it was a mediocre person, they could defy the heavens and change their fate, becoming a dragon among men in one fell swoop? It really opened their eyes. They finally understood why Qin Feiyang and Lin Yi would say those inexplicable words in the Heavenly Joy Building. It turned out that Qin Feiyang had already taken a fancy to them since then. What did they do to deserve this? How could this supreme existence take a fancy to them? Aren't they just two little guys? What's there to fight about? Let them choose for themselves. They can go wherever they want. Little Rabbit waved her hand impatiently. That's right. Although we are strong, we can't control the choice and fate of others. Feather Emperor chuckled. All right. The Deputy Alliance Master nodded and looked at Su Rin and Fong Xian. Think about it yourselves. Do you want to go to the Demonic Palace, the Rogue Cultivators Alliance, or the Heavenly Palace, or the Temple of Gods? The two of them glanced at the group of leaders and were silent for a long time. Suddenly, they looked at each other at the same time with a trace of determination in their eyes. Thank you, seniors, for your appreciation. As Lord Qin said before, we are from the Eastern continent. Our families and friends are all in the Eastern continent. If the demonic palace can really return to its former glory in the future, our first choice will definitely be the demonic palace. The two of them bowed and said. Hearing this, the leaders of the Rogue Cultivators Alliance, Heavenly Palace, and Temple of Gods couldn't help but be disappointed. Elder Hua, Chu Yin, and the demonic palace master revealed a trace of joy. Don't worry. This old man promises that such a thing won't happen in the demonic palace in the future. Elder Hua said in a deep voice. Chu Yin and the demonic palace master nodded. After this lesson, they didn't dare to be careless. This was because no matter what faction it was, only by treating their people well and leaving a good reputation would they be able to go further. The demonic palace had existed for so many years. They couldn't allow it to be destroyed in their hands. Since Senior Hua has personally guaranteed it, then us brothers will choose the demonic palace. The two of them looked at each other and knelt on the ground at the same time. Disciples Su Rin and Fong Xian greet the palace master, deputy palace master, and senior Hua. Good, good, good. Elder Hu was very pleased. He personally helped the two of them up and looked at Shen Xiaojia and Xin Dezhuang. He said with a hoarse voice, Xiaojia, Dezhuang, from now on, the two of you will lead them and teach them how to cultivate. Take good care of these two junior brothers. All right. Shen Xiaojia and Shen Dezhuang nodded. Qin Feiyang looked at Shen Dezhuang in surprise and asked, Dezhuang, you're in the demonic palace too? Shen Dezhuang scratched his head and said with a silly smile, I wanted to go to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, but grandfather insisted that I come to the demonic palace to take care of Xiaojia. I see. Is your grandfather doing well? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Good. Grandfather has suddenly become a battle god and is very motivated. He's preparing to break through to the Divine Lord realm. Moreover, he often talks about you. Xin Dezhuang nodded. With his current condition, he won't have any problem breaking through to the Divine Lord realm, let alone the Divine Lord realm. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Divine Lord realm? Xin Dezhuang was stunned. He laughed dryly and said, I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult. Are you looking down on your grandfather? I've never heard of him. Old but vigorous? Qin Feiyang laughed and then glanced at everyone in front of him. He said with a smile, seeing that all of you are doing well, I'm relieved. This time, he returned to give the inheritance of the ultimate profound to improve the overall strength of the Sky Cloud realm. Secondly, he wanted to see how these old friends were doing. And now, it seemed that everyone was doing well. Chapter 40, 339. Soon, two more people came to Sky Cloud Island. They were Yueqing and Yi Miao. To them, Qin Feiyang and the others were not only their friends, but also their benefactors. Because without the support and care of Qin Feiyang and the others, Sky Joy Building would not be able to reach its current status. It could be said that everything they had now was all thanks to Qin Feiyang and the others. For an entire day and night, everyone sat together on the mountain peak, laughing and chatting as if they had endless things to say. In the blink of an eye, the sky turned white. The sun rose slowly. Buzz! As the space-time passageways appeared, Pei Tianhong, Wang Changyuan, and the other Dark Guard commanders led 6,000 Dark Guards back. Every single one of them was emitting a bloody aura. Over the past day and night, countless people had died in their hands, especially the people from the Demon Hall. Almost 1/3 of them were killed. This was a terrifying number. This was because there were probably more than 10 million disciples in the current Demon Hall. 1/3 of them meant 3 to 4 million people. 3 to 4 million, hearing this number. Elder Hua, Chu Yin, and the Demon Hall Master were all heartbroken. They had only been in seclusion for a few years, and the Demon Hall had already become so corrupt. It was really a profound lesson. At the same time, Pei Tianhong and the others' methods also shocked everyone present. In just one day and night, they had eliminated the 4 major forces. Such efficiency and methods simply made one's scalp tingle. Needless to say, the other creatures in the Sky Cloud realm naturally did not need to be mentioned. In their eyes, these Dark Guards were like the Grim Reaper. Last night, I saw with my own eyes that more than a dozen Dark Guards appeared in EC City. Their strength is too terrifying. There were dozens of enforcers in the Demon Hall. Facing them, they were completely like little chicks. They had no power to fight back and were killed on the spot. Yesterday in the Western Land, I also saw 2 Dark Guards. With a wave of their hands, they wiped out more than a dozen rogue Cultivator Alliance disciples who were abusing their power. Everyone was discussing. Qin Feiyang's actions were simply inspiring. On the other hand, the people from the 4 major forces were terrified and uneasy. They were afraid that they would be targeted by the secret guards. The purge this time had also thoroughly intimidated some of the people from the 4 major forces who had been hoping for a fluke and harbored evil intentions. In the meantime, the rich and powerful families of the four continents were also deeply shocked by this bloody method. Although this time Qin Feiyang was only cleaning up the scum of the four great forces, it was undoubtedly a warning to the rich and powerful families. Today, I can purge the scum of the four major powers, and in the future I can also purge you rich kids from rich families. Therefore, regardless of whether it was the rich and powerful clans or the small clans, all of them immediately called back their clansmen and gave them a profound education overnight. In the future, when they walked in the sky cloud realm, they must not cause trouble and bully others. In fact, they had even included this rule in their clan, because no one dared to offend Qin Feiyang. Once he was enraged, it would be a disaster. Sky Cloud Island. Qin Feiyang sent Pei Tianhong and the others to the Black Tortoise realm, then looked at the big shots of the four major forces and said with a smile, "You won't blame me for taking the initiative to help you clean up the sect, right? Stinking brat, are you deliberately mocking us?" The group of big shots was speechless. It was their negligence that so many scum appeared below. Now that he deliberately asked this question, wasn't it clearly embarrassing them? Regarding this result, the Alliance Master, He Zhongtian, and the big shots of the Sky Palace were all very surprised. They originally thought that even if there were scum in the Rogue, Cultivator Alliance, the Divine Palace, and the Sky Palace, it would be a few. But unexpectedly, the purge this time actually cleared out so many people, because these three major forces had almost hundreds of thousands of people. It was indeed incomparable to the millions of people in the Demon Palace. However, this situation was not a good omen, because this meant that the people of the three major forces were gradually developing towards the Demon Palace. If not for this purge, the people under them would have followed in the footsteps of the Demon Palace sooner or later. How am I being sarcastic? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly, sighing, "I just want the future of the Sky Cloud realm to be better and better. After all, the current peace is not easy to come by." Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. For seniors, Qin Feiyang looked at Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise and smiled. In the future, when the Heavenly Cloud Divine Treasure opens, we can't just look at their talent. The most important thing is their character. Yes, the four nodded. Young people, it was easy to learn bad things, but difficult to learn good things. For example, some people's minds were not strong and were slightly instigated, used, or encountered some unforeseen events, and then embarked on a path of no return. Therefore, someone needed to guide them, let them recognize their mistakes, and correct them in time. Now, the Heavenly Cloud Divine Treasure was the most desirable holy land in the Sky Cloud realm, because there were countless opportunities and fortunes hidden here, and it was just right to use the Heavenly Cloud Divine Treasure to guide the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm to be good. For example, at the end, they could set a threshold for the character assessment. No matter how many assessments you passed in the beginning, in the end, only by passing the character assessment could you enter the Heavenly Cloud Divine Treasure. In this way, it would allow everyone, or at least most people, to maintain a kind and benevolent heart. With the four of you as invigilators, this junior is very assured. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly, got up, looked at everyone, raised the teacup in his hand, and said, "There's no such thing as a banquet that lasts forever. Here, I wish everyone a better future." Everyone looked at each other and smiled, got up one after another, held the wine or teacup in their hands, and clinked with Qin Feiyang across the air. A moment later, after sending everyone away, Qin Feiyang looked at the Feather Emperor and said with a smile, "Old ancestor, I'm going to make a trip back to the Great Qin." Back to the Great Qin? The Feather Emperor was stunned. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded, turned his head to look at the space-time rift floating on the peak of the mountain, and revealed a look of deep longing. "It's good to go back and take a look. After all, you've been away for so long." After a moment of silence, the Feather Emperor spoke with a smile. Yes, time really flies. I guess my brothers and sisters are already full of children and grandchildren. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said with a smile, Then you have to work hard, quickly. Don't wait until their great-grandchildren are all over the place, and you won't even have one. The blood ancestor looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. In the face of these elders, he was most afraid of them urging him to have children. Qin Dage, can I go to the great Qin with you to have a look? Li Feng asked. His eyes were full of expectation and curiosity. Qin Feiyang was taken aback and said with a smile, Of course. Huh. Li Feng bared his teeth. He had long yearned for the great Qin. Qin Feiyang looked at Lin Yi again and asked, Do you want to go back and have a look? Aye. Lin Yi lowered her head. Qin Feiyang comforted her. Don't worry, what happened back then has passed. No one will blame you. Really? Lin Yi looked at Qin Feiyang a little nervous. The great Qin was her home. How could she not want to go back? But the past scenes had been hidden in her heart, making her not have the courage to go back and face her homeland again. Qin Feiyang nodded and gave an encouraging look. Okay, I'll go back. Under Qin Feiyang's encouragement, Lin Yi finally nodded. In fact, running away was not a solution. She had to face what she had to face. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly, turned to look at Li Feng and said, Send a message to the white-eyed wolf and senior brother. Tell them to come back quickly. Li Feng nodded and took out the voice transmission stone. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and looked at the Feather Emperor trio. Do the three of you want to go? Feather Emperor said helplessly, You have given us so many ultimate, profound inheritances. Can we still leave now? Qin Feiyang laughed involuntarily. Then his face turned serious. He looked at the trio and asked, Where are the two ancestors now? The trio looked hesitant. How long do you plan to hide it from me? Qin Feiyang's face darkened. Ahem. The little rabbit coughed dryly and said, Hasn't Mu Qing's omniscient eye evolved? Let him look for it. If Mu Qing can be found, why would I ask you? Qin Feiyang glared at him angrily. Even Mu Qing can't be found? The little rabbit was surprised. We can find it. However, we don't know where it is. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly. It seems that omniscient eye is not omnipotent. The little rabbit grinned and said, Don't be anxious. When the time is right, they will naturally appear. Looking at the smug look on the little rabbit's face, Qin Feiyang really wanted to kick it. We know that you must miss them very much. However, this is a rare opportunity for them. Don't ask for it for the time being. Feather Emperor smiled. All right. Qin Feiyang was helpless. Since it was a great opportunity, he had to endure it first. The blood ancestor looked at Qin Feiyang and said in a low voice, Kid, you have to take good care of my little cub. Little cub? Qin Feiyang was stunned. A hint of mockery flashed in his eyes as he asked suspiciously, Who? The blood ancestor's face darkened. He said angrily, Aren't you asking the obvious? If you don't tell me clearly, how would I know? Qin Feiyang looked aggrieved. Are you asking for a beating? The blood ancestor raised his fist and was about to beat him up. Qin Feiyang quickly dodged and said with an embarrassed smile, You're so old. Why are you still so hot-tempered? Who told you that old people don't have a temper? The blood ancestor snorted. Yes. The older you get, the hotter your temper becomes. Qin Feiyang nodded and asked in a low voice, Then when are you going to meet him? The blood ancestor suddenly hesitated. Li Feng had already finished his transmission. He grinned at the blood ancestor and said, I didn't expect that the great demon king of the sky cloud realm would have a timid moment. Get lost. The blood ancestor's face darkened. He glared at Li Feng and said, Let me tell you, he is my son and you are my disciple. You are brothers. You have to take good care of him for me in the future. Then won't I be his nanny? No, no. I don't even have anyone to take care of me. Li Feng shook his head. You are simply a sinful disciple. How could I have been so blind to fall in love with such a heartless bastard like you? The blood ancestor was so angry that he blew his beard and glared. End of chapter. Chapter 40, 340. We already know each other. What else can you do? Li Feng chuckled. In any case, he was like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. The blood ancestor's face was dark and his veins were bulging. I was just joking with you. Are you serious? How boring. Li Feng pursed his lips and said, If you're really worried, why don't you leave him in the sky cloud realm? Leave him in the sky cloud realm? The blood ancestor was stunned. He had never thought about this question before. He had always been concerned about Nangong Tianyu's future. The achievements of Qin Feiyang and the others were obvious to all. As long as Nangong Tianyu stayed with Qin Feiyang and the others, he would definitely become a great person in the future. So, the only problem in his mind was to let Qin Feiyang and the others take care of him. You have a son in your old age. What if something happens to him in the future? We can't bear the responsibility. Qin Feiyang also nodded. He agreed to let Nangong Tianyu stay in the Sky Cloud realm. After all, even he wasn't confident in the final battle with the Divine Kingdom. Buzz! At this time, the White-Eyed Wolf, Frenzy, and Zhuo Shaoxian returned one after another. At first, they were a little nervous when they saw the Blood Ancestor. But when they saw the Blood Ancestor lowering his head and frowning, as if he didn't even notice his appearance, they couldn't help but feel puzzled. What's going on? The three of them walked to Qin Feiyang and asked in a low voice. He's hesitating about whether Nangong Tianyu should stay or leave. Qin Feiyang said and looked at the White-Eyed Wolf suspiciously. Where have you been fooling around all day and night? I went to the dragons. The White-Eyed Wolf said. The dragons? Qin Feiyang was stunned. When Fire Dance heard this, she frowned slightly, glaring at the ingrate with hostility. She didn't return to the Feng people with pyrotechnic, glow, and Huowenchang. White-Eyed Wolf also noticed Fire Dance's gaze, and he hurriedly revealed a fawning expression. Madman rolled his eyes and chuckled. Brother Wolf, how long have you been apart from Longqin? You're already missing her? Hearing this, the White-Eyed Wolf's expression changed. He said angrily, What nonsense are you talking about? Are you trying to sow discord between me and Sister Feng? You brat, your intentions are not pure. After saying that, he hurriedly ran to Fire Dance and said with a flattering smile, Sister Feng, don't listen to his nonsense. He's just jealous of our feelings, so he wants to drive a wedge between us. Fire Dance rolled her eyes. However, it was indeed a little unusual for this guy to go to the dragons. Seeing that everyone was looking at him suspiciously, the White-Eyed Wolf sighed helplessly and transmitted his voice. To tell you the truth, once I met Dong Jinyang. He told me that if I wanted to find the Eye of Reincarnation, I could go to the dragons and take a look. What? Qin Feiyang and the others were shocked. The owner of the Eye of Reincarnation is among the dragons? Don't get too excited. Although he told us to go to the dragons, he didn't say which dragon it is. The White-Eyed Wolf thought, how many dragons can there be? Madman was puzzled. The dragons of the ancient realm don't count. The dragons of the Sky Cloud realm don't count. Moreover, with Dong Jingyang's annoying nature, this so-called dragons may also refer to the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan. The White-Eyed Wolf transmitted his voice. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. The Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan was indeed considered a dragon. Besides, no matter what happened, Dong Jingyang had the attitude of not revealing the secrets of heaven. Therefore, Every time he answered their questions, he would be vague. Perhaps the dragons he spoke of might represent the purple gold divine dragon clan. We now understand the situation of the purple gold divine dragon clan. Moreover, if there is really the eye of reincarnation, the king and uncle would definitely know about it. They wouldn't hide it from us. As for the dragons of the ancient realm, they are now extinct. After a little analysis, it is very likely that they are the dragons of the sky cloud realm. So, I went to the dragons to see if I could find anything. The white-eyed wolf thought. Then, did you find anything? Qin Feiyang asked. The white-eyed wolf shook his head and said, After my tireless inquiries, there seems to be no information related to the eye of reincarnation. So it might be the dragons of the ancient realm? Madman was surprised. No, the dragons of the ancient realm have been exterminated. Wait. Even if the divine Dragon Island was destroyed, there should more or less be some survivors in the world. Because back then, when we sealed the divine Dragon Island, the dragons were already suppressed by us. So, we can't rule out that some dragons are hiding outside because of fear of us. The white-eyed wolf's eyes flashed. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. There is also the purple gold divine dragon clan. We can't rule out this possibility. After all, if this person wants to deliberately hide it, the king and uncle might not know. The white-eyed wolf analyzed. What a headache. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead. If only the ancestors were here, because when old enemies meet, there would be rejection. But now, even if they locked onto the target, there was nothing they could do because they didn't have the eye of reincarnation. As long as the other party concealed it well, they wouldn't be able to sense the other party's hostility. Madman asked with a voice transmission, This matter is so important. Why did old Dong only tell you? He just mentioned it casually. The white-eyed wolf shook his head. Madman and Qin Feiyang looked at each other and couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that Dong Xingyang didn't take this matter to heart. Anyway, I'm sure that this guy definitely knows a lot of things that we don't know. It's just that he hasn't said anything. The white-eyed wolf pursed his lips. Qin Feiyang and the others nodded and felt the same. Many times they couldn't help but have the thought of interrogating Dong Xingyang, but this thought was suppressed by them in the end. After all, Dong Xingyang also had his own concerns. At this moment, the blood ancestor finally reacted and shook his head. Forget it, huh? Qin Feiyang and the others looked at him in shock. A man's life should be grand. Besides, he is the son of the blood ancestor. He must shoulder the responsibility that belongs to him. The blood ancestor clenched his hands and said firmly. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other and couldn't help but give the blood ancestor a thumbs up. He was indeed a respectable old man. Then when do you plan to meet him? Fire Dance asked. Wait until the final battle between you and the Divine Kingdom is over. If we meet now, I'm afraid it will affect his mood. At that time, we will become a burden to him. Remember, all of you must come back alive. The blood ancestor said. Why does it sound like a parting of life and death? The white-eyed wolf was speechless. Cut the crap. This old man hasn't settled the score with you yet. The blood ancestor glared at him fiercely. So you haven't forgotten. The white-eyed wolf smiled embarrassedly. Hearing this, the blood ancestor suddenly burned with anger and roared. Although this old man is old, my memory is not so bad that I have forgotten what happened yesterday. Ha! The white-eyed wolf laughed dryly. Get lost, get lost. Just looking at you makes me annoyed. The blood ancestor waved his hand impatiently. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other, bowed to the Feather Emperor, the blood ancestor, and the little rabbit, and said, You guys take care. The eyes of the Feather Emperor and the other two couldn't help but moisten. Although Qin Feiyang and the others were returning to the Great Qin, they all knew in their hearts that this was their final farewell. Because at that time, Qin Feiyang and the others would not come to Sky Cloud Island again. They would directly enter the land of the buried gods and quietly enter the divine kingdom without anyone knowing. This was the character of this group of children. They didn't want others to worry about them. They didn't want to see everyone sad because of the pain of separation. Nether King's Hell. After the madman took away the source of all evil, after all these years of precipitation, this place had undergone earth-shattering changes. Sky. Blazing flames shone high in the clear sky. Earth. The vegetation was lush and full of vitality. Although there were still no humans here, there were many ferocious beasts. It could even be said that this was a paradise for ferocious beasts. Swish! In the sky above a mountain, a space-time passage suddenly appeared, immediately alarming the ferocious beasts in the mountains. This seems to be the power of space-time law. In our Nether King's Hell, no one has mastered the power of law. Could it be a big shot from the Sky Cloud realm? Because the creatures of the Sky Cloud realm all moved to Nether King's Hell to seek refuge. The ferocious beasts here were no stranger to the existence of the Sky Cloud realm. At the same time, a fire python appeared in the sky above. Greetings, Lord Guardian. The ferocious beasts prostrated themselves on the ground. Get up. The fire python opened its mouth and stared intently at the space-time passage. Suddenly, a familiar aura surged from the space-time passage. The fire python couldn't help but be refreshed. It seems to be figures also appeared in the heads of the ferocious beasts below. Finally, the first figure appeared. It was Qin Feiyang. The second, third, fourth madman, Zhuo Shaoxian, Fire Dance, White-Eyed Wolf, Lin Yi, and Li Feng also walked out one after another. Brother Qin, Brother Mo, Brother Wolf King, the fire python was extremely excited and hurriedly greeted them. Brother Fire. When Qin Feiyang and the other two heard this voice, they immediately looked down. When they saw the fire python, their faces were full of smiles. And in Qin Feiyang's hand there was a badge. It was none other than the badge he had taken from the jade box. Because the space-time passage between the Sky Cloud realm and Nether King's Hell had not been repaired, they needed this badge to return to Nether King's Hell. Qin Feiyang put away the badge and immediately greeted the fire python. The brotherly love was revealed in their hearts. The fire python said with joy, I thought I would never see you again in the future, but I didn't expect you to come back so soon. Never see us again? What do you mean by this? Are you cursing us? White-Eyed Wolf's face darkened. The fire python was taken aback for a moment and smiled bitterly. Can I curse you? You are all big shots now. You must go to a higher place. What are you thinking? Our brotherly love can't stand the test. Qin Feiyang had a trace of displeasure in his expression, but then he smiled and said, Don't talk about big shots. Even if we become the masters of the world, we will still be brothers in this life. The fire python was moved and nodded. Yes, in this life we are all brothers. Although he was the guardian of miracle, in terms of strength and status, the gap between him and Qin Feiyang and the others was not small. But even so, Qin Feiyang and the others had never forgotten about him. They were also not like some people who became arrogant and conceited and looked down on others. These brothers, it was worth it to hand them over. End of this chapter. Chapter 40, 341. The Hell of Nether King is not bad. The sky is clear, the mountains are green, and the water is even more beautiful than a fairyland. Glancing at this continent that was completely different from before, Lin Yi's eyes were full of surprise. Because there was no destruction from humans, everything in the Hell of Nether King looked very beautiful. Isn't this my credit? Madman smiled proudly. Bullshit, Zhuo Shaoxian whispered next to him. It's the truth. If I didn't take away the source of all evil and help everyone remove the control, would the hell of Nether King become like this? Madman said, "It's true that it's your credit, but don't mention it all the time. You are deliberately showing off." Shuashaoxian said, unconvinced. "Haha." Fire Python laughed, looked at Laozian, asked, "This is my sister-in-law, right?" "Sort of." Madman nodded. "Sort of?" Shuashaoxian grabbed Madman's arm and said fiercely, "Say it again." She looked like a little tiger that was angry. "No, no, you are my one and only. In this life, I have decided on you. As for other women, no matter how beautiful they are, I will not spare a glance." Madman quickly admitted defeat. It was too shameful to be bullied by his own woman in front of his brother. Fire Python looked at Madman in surprise. He didn't expect that the reincarnation of Blood Demon King would be subdued by a little girl. He looked at Chua Shaoxian and said with a smile, "Sister-in-law, the changes in the Hell of Nether King are indeed thanks to Brother Madman." "Did you see that? Did you see that?" Even he, the guardian, said so. Madman looked at Chua Shaoxian proudly, as if to say, "Little girl, it's your blessing to be fancied by me. Don't bully me all day. Be careful that I will divorce you one day." Chua Shaoxian rolled her eyes. What a shameless guy. "Brother Qin, how is the situation in the Sky Cloud realm now? Has the Divine Kingdom been driven away by you?" The ferocious beasts below could not help but ask all at once. The Divine Kingdom's invasion of the Sky Cloud realm was no longer a secret in the Hell of Nether King. "Thank you for your concern. Everything is fine." Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. "That's good. Are you going back to Great Qin to reunite with your family?" "To be honest, you should go back and take a look. After all, you've been away for so many years. Your family must miss you very much." His words were filled with concern. "Yes, I'm preparing to go back. Of course, I also wanted to visit everyone. Also, in the future, if the descendants of the Qin clan come to the Hell of Hades for training, please take good care of them." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Haha, we will definitely take good care of the descendants of the Qin clan. Yes. We won't stop until we beat them to a pulp." The group of beasts burst into laughter. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. "So that's how he took care of me." It seemed like the descendants of the Qin clan would have a hard time in the Hell of Hades. However, this was also a good thing. After all, there was a saying that a jade that was not carved would not become a treasure. All right, disperse. They're not national treasures. There's nothing to see." The fire python waved its claws and laughed. "That's easy. Let them give birth to a baby. Won't that be our national treasure?" Yes. "Brother Qin, you have time now. Shouldn't you think about it?" The group of beasts kept cheering. They were not nervous at all. Qin Feiyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Even these beasts were urging him to have a baby. The fire python was speechless. It said angrily, "Go away! Even if Brother Qin gives birth to a baby, do you think he'll let you play with it like a toy?" "That's not impossible." One of the beasts grinned. Then it turned around and disappeared. The other ferocious beasts also dispersed. Zhua, Shaoxian, and the Fire Phoenix looked at each other. They didn't expect Qin Feiyang to be so popular in the Hell of Hades. The Fire Python smiled bitterly. It looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Brother Qin, don't mind them. They mean no harm. I know. The more they behave like this, the closer they are to me. I'm more than happy." Qin Feiyang chuckled. He liked this feeling of being free. It was unlike in the Sky Cloud realm and the Divine Kingdom. No matter who it was, they would feel uncomfortable when they saw him. The white-eyed wolf asked curiously, "Little Python, are there any changes in the Divine Demon Forest and Fallen Valley?" "Little Python?" The fire python's mouth twitched. It said helplessly, "I knew I couldn't escape this fate sooner or later." "What do you mean?" The white-eyed wolf was a little confused. "I mean, don't give people random nicknames all day." Fire Dance glared at it. Little Python, you call that a nickname? How about I call you Little Python? The white-eyed wolf bared its teeth at the fire python. As long as you're happy. The fire python shook its head and smiled bitterly. Fallen Valley and other places are definitely different from before. After all, there is no evil force in the Nether King's hell. However, the divine demon forest is still the same as before. In comparison, it's less dangerous than before. Now, many beasts dare to go to the divine demon forest alone to look for opportunities. Then it seems that the Nether King's hell will give birth to many sovereign realm experts in the future. The white-eyed wolf smiled. Definitely. Without the restriction of the rules, many beasts have broken the shackles and stepped into the imperishable realm. The fire python nodded. But there is still something missing here. Fire Dance muttered. What's missing? Everyone looked at her suspiciously. People. Fire Dance said. Don't. It's good like this now. If humans really come here, they will definitely create chaos in the Nether King's hell. The fire python quickly waved its hand. Old man, are you looking down on us humans? Frenzy was unhappy. Haha. It's not that I look down on you humans, but you humans are hated. Of course, that doesn't include you guys. The fire python laughed. Do you mean that we can stay here for a long time? Frenzy asked. Of course, you can stay as long as you want. I believe that the beasts here will welcome you. The fire python nodded. Not bad, not bad. Frenzy turned his head to look at Zhuo Xiaoxian and chuckled. In the future, when we retire, we will stay here for a few years and live the life of an immortal couple. Zhuo Xiaoxian's cheeks blushed. Qin Feiyang looked at Frenzy and Zhuo Xiaoxian. Wasn't this wish also his wish? Wait. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang raised his head to look at the sky, and his face darkened slightly. What's wrong? Everyone couldn't help but be shocked, and looked at Qin Feiyang and asked. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, Isn't the ruler of the divine kingdom in the Nether King's hell now? Hearing this, Frenzy, White-Eyed Wolf, Fire Dance, Zhuo Xiaoxian, and Li Feng's eyes suddenly trembled. The ruler of the divine kingdom? Lin Yi looked suspicious. Why would the ruler of the divine kingdom be in the Nether King's hell? Not to mention the fire python. Even the ruler of the divine kingdom had never heard of it. Brother Fire, have you seen any traces of small beast and ice dragon in the Nether King's hell over the years? Qin Feiyang asked. No. The fire python shook its head and said in surprise, Are they in the Nether King's hell? No. Qin Feiyang frowned. It seemed that even the fire python, the guardian, couldn't sense the existence of ice dragon and small beast. Mu Qing, can you help me check where the ruler of the divine kingdom is now? And ice dragon and small beast, are they with him? Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and secretly transmitted his voice. Okay. Mu Qing's response immediately sounded in his mind. Chapter 40, 342. Brother Qin, the ruler of the divine kingdom you mentioned. Is it the lord of the divine kingdom you mentioned before? Fire Python was surprised. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. No. Isn't the lord of the divine kingdom the ruler? Fire Python's eyes widened in disbelief, because, in his opinion, the lord of the divine kingdom was the most supreme existence in the divine kingdom. The situation in the divine kingdom is a bit complicated. The lord of the divine kingdom is just the master of the divine kingdom on the surface. The real ruler is someone else. According to Mu Qing's omniscient eye, the ruler of the divine kingdom is now in Hades' hell. Small beast and ice dragon brought him here. Qin Feiyang explained. What? In my Hades' hell? Fire Python's eyes trembled. As the guardian of this place, he didn't know anything about it. Lin Yi asked puzzledly, why did Ice Dragon and Small Beast bring him to Hades' hell? Qin Feiyong pondered for a while. In the end, he decided to tell Lin Yi the truth and said, because if this ruler is always in the divine kingdom, then we have no chance to establish ourselves at all. In other words, to restrain the ruler of the divine kingdom? Lin Yi asked. Yes. Qin Feiyong nodded. A bitter smile crept onto his face as he sighed. Although the ice dragon and the little critter are very hateful, I really have to thank them for all these years. Because if it weren't for them constantly restraining the ruler of Scandinavia, I'm afraid we would have already lost our lives in the hands of this ruler. Strange, why would they help you? Lin Yi frowned. What else can it be? They must have found their conscience. The white-eyed wolf sneered. Found their conscience? Lin Yi shook her head non-committally. It was impossible for existences like Ice Dragon and Small Beast to do something meaningless. The location has been locked. A short while passed. Mu Qing's voice finally sounded. Where? Qin Feiyong was shocked. Godfiend Forest. The small beast isn't here, but the ice dragon is. Mu Qing said. What? They are actually in the mythical forest. Qin Feiyong stared blankly and asked, Are you sure? Of course. Mu Qing replied. They are in the mythical forest? Meanwhile, Madman and the others also looked at Qin Feiyong in shock. Yes, Mu Qing said that he and Ice Dragon were both in the forest of gods and devils, but they didn't see Small Beast. Qin Feiyong nodded. Impossible. I've been to the forest of divine demons several times over the years, but I didn't see Lord Ice Dragon at all, let alone the ruler of the divine kingdom. The Fire Python frowned. Brother Fire, although you are the guardian of this place, don't forget that the other party is Ice Dragon and the ruler of the divine kingdom. With their strength, if they don't want you to know, even if they are standing in front of you, you won't be able to find them. Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. Hearing this, the Fire Python couldn't help but smile bitterly. It was indeed so. One was Ice Dragon, one was Small Beast. They were both unfathomable existences. Moreover, his position as the guardian of the miracle was given to him by Ice Dragon and Small Beast. The white-eyed wolf asked, Do you want to go to the forest of gods and devils to take a look? Hearing this, Qin Feiyong and Madman looked at each other. They were a little restless. Why don't we go and take a look? If it doesn't work, we will just take a look from afar and not provoke them. The Fire Python's eyes were also filled with curiosity about the ruler of the divine kingdom. Okay, Qin Feiyong nodded. To be honest, he was also a little curious about the ruler of the divine kingdom. The Fire Python asked, Did Mu Qing say where they are in the forest of gods and devils? Let me ask first. After saying this, Qin Feiyong secretly asked Mu Qing. A moment later, Qin Feiyong looked up at the Fire Python and said, Mu Qing said that they are at the top of a giant mountain. This giant mountain has a very obvious feature. It is in the shape of a trident. Trident, the Fire Python lowered its head and pondered for a while. Suddenly its eyes lit up. As it waved its claws, an image appeared in the void in front of it. In the image was a majestic mountain range. There were many mountains and giant beasts running amok. One of the giant mountains was exactly as Mu Qing described. It was in the shape of a trident. From afar, it looked like a trident standing among the mountains. Is it here? The Fire Python asked. This was not an illusion. As the guardian of this place, just like Qin Feiyong in the Black Tortoise realm, the Fire Python could see the whole picture of the Nether King's hell. Qin Feiyong was not sure, because he had only heard Mu Qing's description. Whether it was true or not, he had to ask Mu Qing to confirm it in person. With a thought, Mu Qing appeared beside him. Long time no see. How have you been? Seeing the Fire Python, Mu Qing immediately greeted him. Thank you for your concern. The Fire Python smiled slightly. Naturally, he did not have the same feelings for Mu Qing as he did for Qin Feiyong and the others. Do you think it's here? Qin Feiyang pointed at the image in the void. Mu Qing looked up for a while and nodded. It's here, but, speaking of this, he could not help but frown. He scanned the mountain peak and said, Brother Fire, can you enlarge the scene on the mountain peak? The fire python waved, and the mountain peak in the image immediately enlarged. However, on the mountain peak there was nothing but grass, trees, and gravel. What's going on? I clearly saw a small wooden house on the mountain peak with my all-seeing eye. Ice Dragon and the ruler of the Divine Kingdom are sitting in front of the wooden house and drinking tea. Mu Qing frowned. You saw a wooden house? Qin Feiyang and the others scanned the mountain peak in surprise. With the fire python's magnification, they could see every blade of grass and tree on the mountain peak clearly. However, they did not see the small wooden house that Mu Qing mentioned. Are you sure you're not mistaken? A few days ago, when I went to the forest of gods and demons, I passed by this place. I did not see any wooden house at all. The fire python could not help but frown. Mu Qing activated his all-seeing eye again and said in a low voice, I'm sure, they are on the mountain peak now. But why can't I see them? Qin Feiyang glanced at Mu Qing and scanned the mountain peak without blinking. Mu Qing's all-seeing eye could not be wrong. There must be something strange about this. The fire python looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Why don't we go to the scene and take a look? Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. The fire python waved its claws, and a group of people immediately appeared in the sky above the forest of gods and demons. The trident-shaped giant peak was located right below them. It could be said that it was close at hand. However, even if they were to search at close range, they still could not find the so-called wooden house. Seeing a ghost in broad daylight, Mu Qing frowned. No, there must be something that we have overlooked. Qin Feiyang whispered. Suddenly, his eyes flashed as he scanned the mountain peak and muttered, Could it be an illusion he had encountered such a situation in the sky, Bell divine treasure? At that time, the Black Flame Demon King came to find trouble with him and created an illusion. It seemed that there was no one, but in fact the Black Flame Demon King was standing not far away and looking at him. All of a sudden, his eyes began to change. Streams of life and death power constantly surged. Life and death eye open. The life and death eye could see through illusions and see through fabrications. The moment the life and death eye opened, the mountain peak suddenly changed into a different scene. He saw that the mountain peak, which was originally uneven in height, was now extremely flat with lush green weeds growing on it. The tall trees also disappeared and were replaced by lush small trees that surrounded the mountain peak. Here it was like a big garden. At the center of the mountain peak stood a small wooden building that was 2 stories tall. It was decorated with carved beams and painted pillars. It had an antique style and appeared to be quite exquisite. Beside the wooden building, there was a pavilion. 2 figures sat facing each other in the pavilion, with a pot of tea on the stone table in the middle, but their faces were blurry, and it was impossible to see their true faces. However, it could be seen that the 2 were drinking tea while looking at Qin Feiyang and the others. That's right, these 2 people were Ice Dragon and the ruler of the Divine Kingdom. Old Qin, how is it? Madman asked. Qin Feiyang did not answer. The life and death eye bloomed with divine light and shouted, Break! The illusion was immediately broken. Everything on the mountain peak immediately appeared. When Madman and the others saw Ice Dragon and the ruler of the Divine Kingdom, they immediately became cautious as if they were facing a great enemy. Greetings, Lord Dragon God. Fire Python also hurriedly bowed. Who would have thought that this place was actually an illusion? Could it be that they had not discovered these 2 people all these years? Ice Dragon glanced at Fire Python indifferently, then looked at Qin Feiyang and the others with an extremely displeased expression. Not bad. You still have the mood to come back and stroll around. Can't we rest if we're tired? Madman snorted coldly. How long has it been? And you're already saying that you're tired. Is that all you can do? It seems that we really misjudged. Ice Dragon said. Don't just stand there and talk. White-Eyed Wolf's face was full of anger as he roared. Go and ask Dragon! Cough, cough! But before White-Eyed Wolf could finish speaking, Ice Dragon coughed and interrupted White-Eyed Wolf's words, and secretly gave White-Eyed Wolf a warning. White-Eyed Wolf originally wanted to say, Go and ask Long Chin and Long Chin if they're tired after all these years. As for Ice Dragon interrupting White-Eyed Wolf, it was naturally to prevent his relationship with Long Chen and his sister from being known by the ruler of the Divine Kingdom. The warning at the back was also to warn White-Eyed Wolf, not to let it slip. TSK. White-Eyed Wolf's face was full of disdain. Of course, he understood, but in his heart he really despised him. Even his son and daughter did not dare to let the ruler of the Divine Kingdom know. It seemed that they were not very good. Then why are you here now? Ice Dragon frowned. Is there a need to say? Of course, we're here to visit this ruler, to see if he's used to living in our Nether King's hell. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth lifted. The sarcasm in his words could be heard as long as one was not a fool. When Ice Dragon heard this, he looked at the silent ruler of the Divine Kingdom sitting opposite him and couldn't help but have a playful look in his eyes. Ruler, why aren't you saying anything? Aren't you curious about the current situation of the Divine Kingdom? And this time, how did we pass through the gate of the Divine Kingdom and return to the Sky Cloud realm? Li Feng looked at the ruler of the Divine Kingdom, who had his head lowered and was drinking tea indifferently, and the sarcasm in his words became even more obvious. End of this chapter. Chapter 43. Hearing these words, the Divine Kingdom's ruler's hand that was holding the teacup tightened. As for Ice Dragon, he was completely watching a show at this moment. Although Qin Feiyang and others ran back to the Sky Cloud realm without permission, which made him quite dissatisfied, it was good to see the Divine Kingdom's ruler's exasperated look. You really don't want to know? If you don't want to know, we will tell you. The 5 major races of the Divine Kingdom have been wiped out by us, especially the Sea Clan and the Beast Clan that you regarded as your confidants. Now none of them are left. They were all killed by us. There is also an old thing named Yulao. We don't know who he is to you, but he also died miserably. You don't believe it? Old Qin, take out their ruler's divine weapons. The madman grinned. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Tianju sword, Godslayer halberd, and Star Tower, 3 high-level rulers' divine weapons appeared. This is Lin Yi and Fire Python's pupil shrank. Of course, they have seen rulers' divine weapons before. These 3 rulers' divine weapons were obviously countless times stronger than the ones they had seen before. At this moment, facing the Divine Kingdom's ruler, the 3 rulers' divine weapons were a little afraid. Be tough for me. You are now our ruler's divine weapons. Don't be a coward and embarrass us. The madman stared at the 3 rulers' divine weapons. The 3 rulers' divine weapons artifact spirits were bitter in their hearts. Don't you know who the other party is? That is the ruler of the Divine Kingdom who created them. In front of such an existence, how could they not be nervous? At the same time, Ice Dragon was also surprised. He didn't expect that in just these few years, these kids had already conquered half of the Divine Kingdom. The destruction of the 5 major races was equivalent to destroying half of the Divine Kingdom. Now, there was only one central dynasty left in the Divine Kingdom. Give me some face and take a look. The madman swayed the 3 high-level rulers' divine weapons with a smug look. Crack! With a crisp sound, the teacup in the hands of the sovereign of the Divine Kingdom shattered. Madman was shocked, but thinking that Ice Dragon was also present, he was fearless. He laughed and said, Speaking of which, who is Yu Lao to you? I heard that he has a very high status in the Central Dynasty. Even your son, the Emperor, ordered his subordinates to rescue him no matter what. Whoosh! The dominator of the Divine Kingdom stood up, looked up at the madman, and asked, "Did you really kill him?" His tone contained a bone-piercing chill. So angry? It seems that this Yu Lao's relationship with you is not simple. But it's a pity that there's nothing left of him. This is also your fault. Why didn't you tell us earlier? If you had told us earlier, we would have kept his head and delivered it to you personally. Madman shook his head with a look of regret. You're courting death. The sovereign of the Divine Kingdom was enraged, and the power of laws surged out. The madman's expression changed, and he quickly pulled Zhuo Shaoxian back, roaring, "Old Qin, I'll leave it to you." "Yes, take care of it." The white-eyed wolf also pulled Fire Dance and quickly fled. Qin Feiyang stared at the sovereign of the Divine Kingdom, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. He said to Lin Yi, Li Feng, and the fire python behind him, "I also want to experience his strength. Step back. Can you do it? He is the sovereign of the Divine Kingdom." Li Feng was worried. The sovereign's strongest means is nothing more than the power of origin. But in hell, he can't control the power of origin of the Divine Kingdom at all. Besides, he is also a human. Don't be afraid of him just because he is the sovereign of the Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. Li Feng, Lin Yi, and the fire python looked at each other and quickly retreated to the side of the madman and the white-eyed wolf. "You have courage." Ice Dragon nodded with an appreciative smile. With a wave of his hand, a huge barrier appeared above the forest of gods and demons. He said, "Don't worry about harming the creatures of hell. Go all out and fight him." Qin Feiyang glanced at Ice Dragon and stepped into the barrier. "Are you looking for death? I will fulfill your wish." The sovereign of the Divine Kingdom laughed and rushed into the barrier like lightning. He slammed his palm at Qin Feiyang with monstrous, murderous intent. "Without the power of origin, I want to see what you can do." Qin Feiyang was not to be outdone. Boom! An invisible force rolled out. A punch blasted out. In an instant, the fist and the palm collided. A wave of destructive energy surged out in all directions like a torrent, toppling mountains and overturning seas. Just the collision of physical strength and power stunned Lin Yi and the fire python. If Ice Dragon set up a barrier with such destructive force, the mythical forest would be razed to the ground in minutes. One was the sovereign of the Divine Kingdom, and the other was the sovereign of the Black Tortoise world. A pinnacle showdown between sovereigns. The strength of the two was almost neck and neck. Sure enough, without the power of origin, you are no different from us. Qin Feiyang's confidence skyrocketed. His fists were like a storm as he attacked the sovereign of the Divine Kingdom. Bang! Bang! In just a few seconds, the two had exchanged hundreds of rounds. This sovereign of the Divine Kingdom doesn't seem to be that powerful. The fire python grumbled. Ugh! Frenzy, white-eyed wolf, Fire Dance, and Zhuo Shaoxian looked at each other. Sure enough, the ignorant were fearless. He dared to say such words. Back then, if Ice Dragon and Small Beast came to rescue them, they would have died in the hands of this person as soon as they entered the Divine Kingdom. The power of origin of the Divine Kingdom was not to be trifled with. Boom! Another fist met. Qin Feiyang and the sovereign of the Divine Kingdom took a few steps back. The sovereign of the Divine Kingdom said in disbelief, "I really didn't expect that in just these few years you have grown to this point in the Divine Kingdom." "My growth is not something you can imagine." Qin Feiyang became more and more courageous as he fought. The ultimate profundity of the law of life and death and the ultimate profundity of the 6 strongest laws were activated at the same time. Dual will of heavenly Tao erupted. What? The sovereign of the divine kingdom was shocked. He remembered that when he entered the divine kingdom, this person had just comprehended the ultimate profundity of the law of life and death. As for the strongest laws, there were only the law of life and death, the law of life, and the law of cause and effect. But he didn't expect that after returning from the divine kingdom, there would be an additional ultimate profundity of the law of destruction, the law of space-time and the law of time. How did he do it? Even Ice Dragon felt it was incredible. He didn't expect that it was Long Chen who helped. If he knew that all this was because of Long Chen's soul manipulation, his expression would be very interesting. Brother Frenzy, Brother Wolf, what's going on? Lin Yi also had a look of surprise. Back then, when Qin Feiyang comprehended the ultimate profundity of the law of life and death, she had already heard about the battle with the king and others in the western continent. Therefore, she knew a little about the will of heavenly Tao. Now, the will of heavenly Tao that Qin Feiyang erupted was obviously much stronger than before. This is the benefit of comprehending the law of life and death. I can master too, will of heavenly Tao. Frenzy's face was full of yearning. He had been in seclusion all these years to study the law of life and death. Who wouldn't desire dual will of heavenly Tao? But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't fuse the law of life and death. That kind of powerlessness and difficulty was simply despairing. Come on. Let me see what you're capable of. Don't lose your origin power. You'll become a paper tiger. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the 7 ultimate profundities carried the power to destroy the world as they madly charged toward the sovereign of the divine kingdom. This kid is a bit arrogant. As a sovereign, how can his strength be weak? Well, let him learn a lesson so that he won't be too arrogant, Ice Dragon whispered. But Qin Feiyang didn't hear these words. He stared at the sovereign of the divine kingdom. The 7 ultimate profundities were almost in front of the sovereign of the divine kingdom. Facing these 7 ultimate profundities, even experts like the sovereign and the divine king had to avoid them. But the sovereign of the divine kingdom stood in front of them without moving. So calm, Madman murmured. Boom! The next moment, a monstrous might emerged. The sovereign of the divine kingdom looked coldly at Qin Feiyang and said with contempt, "Don't you know that to become the true sovereign of a world, one must first comprehend the law of life and death?" As his voice fell, the power of life and death roared out. The sovereign of life and death instantly appeared. What? When this scene appeared, not only Qin Feiyang, but Madman and the others also changed their expressions. They never expected that the sovereign of the divine kingdom also grasped the law of life and death. Wasn't it said that no one in the divine kingdom comprehended the law of life and death? What was going on? In the history of the divine kingdom, no one has comprehended the law of life and death. But can I, the sovereign of the divine kingdom, be considered an ordinary person? Kid, you underestimate this sovereign too much. The sovereign of the divine kingdom smiled sinisterly, and another ultimate profundities appeared. There were 9 ultimate profundities of the strongest law. In other words, they were the ultimate profundities of all ordinary laws. That's right. This sovereign of the divine kingdom grasped the ultimate profundities of all laws, including the law of light and darkness. So strong? Madman and White-Eyed Wolf's eyes trembled. The ultimate profundities of all laws: time, space-time destruction, nothingness, karma, light and darkness, devour, death, life, thunder, slaughter, light, darkness, metal, wood, fire, force, and so on. Wasn't this the goal they were chasing now? And this sovereign of the divine kingdom had already reached the peak of this realm. Now you know how insignificant you are. The sovereign of the divine kingdom sneered. The various ultimate profundities erupted with a terrifying will of the heavens. It was also a dual will of the heavens. With a loud bang, the ultimate profundities of both sides collided violently. In the face of absolute suppression in numbers, Qin Feiyang's 7 ultimate profundities crumbled on the spot. "Brother Feiyang," Lin Yi exclaimed in panic. Compared to when he was in the Sky Cloud realm, Qin Feiyang's strength had improved too much. It could be said that he could easily suppress the entire Sky Cloud realm by himself. But the other party's strength was even more terrifying. Mastering the ultimate profundities of all laws was simply unimaginable. "Don't panic. Your brother Feiyang has more means than this." Madman and White-Eyed Wolf comforted him. But looking at the sovereign of the divine kingdom standing inside the enchantment, their eyes were more dignified than anyone else. Chapter 4344. Rumble inside the enchantment. Qin Feiyang's situation was precarious. The divine kingdom's dominator's ultimate intent was like rolling thunder, shattering the vast sky and crazily attacking Qin Feiyang. "It seems that you're not a paper tiger." Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes slightly. 3,000 incarnations instantly appeared in the void behind him. "That's right. Brother Feiyang still has this trump card." Lin Yi was shocked. As long as the 3,000 incarnations are activated, there is no enemy that Brother Feiyang can't defeat. As soon as the 3,000 incarnations appeared, 21,000 ultimate intent instantly appeared, exuding a terrifying divine power that was enough to destroy this continent. That's right. At this moment, without Ice Dragon's enchantment, the entire hell would definitely turn into ashes. After all, hell was too small. Not even 1/10 of the Sky Cloud realm. Even if you have mastered all the ultimate intent, you can't block my 21,000 ultimate intent. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. Rumble. The 21,000 ultimate intent was like a runaway wild horse, covering the sky and earth. Sure enough, the dozens of ultimate intent of the divine kingdom's dominator were unable to fight back and collapsed on the spot. Immediately after, 21,000 ultimate profound meanings instantly drowned him. It's really not that good. The madman smiled. As soon as the 3,000 incarnations were activated, Qin Feiyang was basically an invincible existence. Even the dominator would still die. Phew! Qin Feiyang also let out a long sigh. The divine kingdom's dominator was indeed powerful, but without the power of the origin, he was still a lot weaker. If we can take the opportunity to kill him now, then we will have one less big problem. The White-Eyed Wolf muttered, staring at the battlefield that was drowned by the ultimate intent. There was some expectation in his eyes. After a while, dust fell to the ground. However, Qin Feiyang and the others were dumbfounded on the spot. The void of the enchantment had turned into a mess, but the dominator of the divine kingdom, standing on the opposite side, was unscathed. How is this possible? One must know. Now he had 21,000 ultimate profound meanings and 2 wills of the heavenly Tao. Among them, there were 3,000 ultimate profundities of the laws of life and death. How could such means not even injure the master of the divine kingdom? You guys are also naive. If this is the extent of my power, how can I rule such a large divine kingdom? The sovereign of the divine kingdom looked at the mad scientist and the others mockingly. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Although you are also the sovereign of the Black Tortoise realm, compared to me, you are still too weak. No, to be exact, your position in the Black Tortoise world is equivalent to that of a guardian." What a joke! Even a sovereign can't possibly be this strong. Madman and the others clenched their fists tightly. Qin Feiyang stared at the ruler of the divine kingdom. He didn't even turn his head to look at the 3,000 incarnations as he roared. If we can't defeat him in the divine kingdom now, then we will have even less hope once he returns to the divine kingdom. Therefore, we cannot lose this battle. Yes, we can't lose. The 3,000 incarnations roared in unison. All the ultimate intents were activated once more. Carrying an apocalyptic aura, they once again attacked the sovereign of the divine kingdom. Ignorant child, when you step into my realm in the future, you will know how naive and laughable your actions are. The sovereign of the divine kingdom sneered. Boom! Before he finished speaking, the power of law surged out of his body. This was the law of death. It was very ordinary. There was nothing special about it. Looking at this law of death, Qin Feiyang and the others couldn't help but be puzzled. Previously, even after activating all the ultimate intents, they still couldn't block the 21,000 ultimate intents of the 3,000 incarnations. Now, with just one law of death, this person wanted to reverse the situation? Who was the naive one? Who was the laughable one? However, before they could speak, the law of death around the sovereign of the divine kingdom suddenly soared into the sky. Boom! Accompanied by a terrifying divine might, a giant black figure appeared in the sky. This giant figure was wrapped in a black robe, and death energy swirled around it. It wore a skull mask on its face, exuding a ferocious aura. Moreover, with the appearance of this giant figure, a gust of wind blew within the barrier and dark clouds rolled. This was all condensed from the death energy. Qin Feiyang, who was inside the barrier, had never felt such a terrifying death energy. At this moment, he had a very real feeling, as if he was in the 18 levels of hell, and there were the roars of ghosts and ghosts in his ears. There were even illusions in front of his eyes. It was as if he was looking at soldiers wearing armor and surging with death energy, breaking through the void, waving the sharp blades in their hands and pouncing towards him. What is this thing? Outside, Frenzy and the others also looked at the giant black figure in surprise. They had never seen it before. The various ultimate intents of the law of death also didn't have such a form. Moreover, even though they were separated by a barrier, they could still feel a sense of fatal danger. It was like a giant black shadow. As long as it waved its fist, they would be smashed to pieces. Clang! However, it wasn't over yet. Accompanied by a deafening noise, a dark stone door appeared behind the giant black figure. This was the gate of hell. It was tens of thousands of feet tall, and the death energy was monstrous. Boom! The next moment, another dark red waning moon rose into the sky. Not only the barrier, but even the divine demon forest outside was dyed dark red, giving people an illusion that they had entered an endless purgatory. Isn't this the supreme ultimate intents of the law of death? Frenzy murmured. Boom! However, before his voice faded, it was accompanied by a terrifying aura. The 18 levels of hell appeared. This, Qin Feiyang was also stunned. The ultimate intents of the law of death? Gate of hell, waning moon, 18 levels of hell. What was this person trying to do? You shouldn't have returned to the sky cloud realm, and you shouldn't have come to the Nether King's hell to provoke me, because if you had stayed in the divine kingdom, you could have lived a little longer. Now, you will slowly walk towards destruction in the movement of death. The ruler of the divine kingdom raised his hand and pointed in the air. The gate of hell, waning moon, and 18 levels of hell merged together with a dazzling divine light. The next moment, a dark red giant sickle appeared in the sky. It was hundreds of feet long. Every sawtooth on it flickered with a sinister light. At the same time, an unprecedented demonic aura erupted. This demonic aura had already surpassed the ultimate intents of the supreme ultimate intents, and it surpassed it by more than a little. Even the ultimate intents of the law of life and death were far inferior. It was simply unprecedented. Qin Feiyang stood in front of the giant black shadow, facing the giant sickle in the giant shadow's hand. An indescribable fear emerged in his heart. That's right. At this moment, fear and other emotions instantly drowned him. He couldn't even move. His legs seemed to be stuck in a quagmire, and there was only despair in his mind. This feeling was like facing the sky, swallowing beast. Yes, the current ruler of the divine kingdom gave him the same sense of crisis that the golden small beast gave him in the past. Little Qinzi, what are you doing? Now is not the time to sleepwalk. The white-eyed wolf roared. Sleepwalk? What a childish and ridiculous thing to say. He has now been drowned in fear and despair. To put it simply, he has been scared silly. You dare to challenge me with this little strength? You really don't know what death is. The ruler of the divine kingdom smiled contemptuously. With a wave of his hand, the giant black shadow raised the giant sickle in his hand and slashed at the void in front of him. The 21,000 ultimate intents of the 3,000 clones were almost in front of the ruler of the divine kingdom. The lethality of these 21,000 ultimate intents was obvious to all. Even the powerful divine kingdom did not dare to compete with them. However, at this moment, the giant black shadow merely waved the giant sword in his hand, and the 21,000 ultimate intents were all destroyed in an instant. That's right, in an instant, all of them were destroyed. Without any resistance, they were as fragile as rotten wood. Who would be able to accept such a scene? Qin Feiyang could not accept it. Lunatic and the White-Eyed Wolf could not accept it either. Li Feng, Fire Dance, and Zhuo Shaoxian could not accept it either. It was too terrifying. 3,000 ultimate intents of the law of life and death, 18,000 ultimate intents of the law of ultimate intents, and 2 wills of the great path. This terrifying technique that could sweep away everything was easily defeated by the giant sickle. What kind of strength was this? Wasn't the strongest technique in the world the ultimate intents? But now, the ruler of the divine kingdom was using a technique that was many times more powerful than the ultimate intents. Even the kingdom of life and death was like an adult and a baby in front of this technique. What is this? How can it be so powerful? When they came back to their senses, Lunatic and the White-Eyed Wolf roared in disbelief. To defeat 21,000 ultimate intents with 2 wills of the great path, even a legendary divine weapon of the Dominator couldn't do this. They must be dreaming. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also stared at the giant black shadow and giant sickle behind the ruler of the divine kingdom, dumbfounded. His mind was in a mess, just like Lunatic and the White-Eyed Wolf. They could not believe what they were seeing, because this was far beyond their understanding of the ultimate intents. Do you understand now? If it weren't for the sky-swallowing beast and the ice dragon helping you, you would have died countless times. Killing trash like you is just a matter of waving my hand and nodding my head. Go repent in hell. The ruler of the divine kingdom smiled sinisterly. The giant black shadow raised the giant sickle in its hand. The terrifying demonic power made Qin Feiyang unable to move an inch, and his heart was filled with extreme fear. Get out of the way! Lunatic and the White-Eyed Wolf roared at the same time. Qin Feiyang didn't want to get out of the way. He wanted to, but at this moment he couldn't move. His heart could not help but set off a storm. He, who had opened the door to all his potential, was still imprisoned by this pressure? How strong was this? He didn't have the strength to fight back at all. He could only watch as the giant sickle fell. His entire body and mind were shrouded in the shadow of death. No, bastard, if you dare to kill him, we will fight you to the death. Lunatic and the White-Eyed Wolf roared angrily. All the ultimate intents were activated, and the wills of the great path erupted. Moreover, they also awakened the Sky Extinction Sword, the God-Slaying Halberd, and the Star Tower, the 3 high-level Dominator divine weapons. They didn't care about their lives and madly rushed toward the barrier. Chapter 40, 345. However, 3 high-grade Dominator weapons and the ultimate intents of the Mad Scientist and the White-Eyed Wolf were unable to break through Ice Dragon's barrier. So strong! The two immediately looked at Ice Dragon. Ice Dragon glanced indifferently at the mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf. With a wave of his hand, Qin Feiyong, who was standing motionless within the barrier, disappeared without a trace. By the time everyone came back to their senses, Qin Feiyong had already appeared beside the mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf. Whoosh! Seeing that Qin Feiyong was safe, everyone let out a sigh of relief. What are you doing? However, the god of the divine kingdom stared at Ice Dragon with extreme anger. Ice Dragon said indifferently, "This is the Nether King's hell. Do you think it's appropriate for you to kill my people in front of me?" Hearing these biased words, the god of the divine kingdom couldn't help but clench his fists. What? You want to compete with me? Although I'm not a god, your strength might not be stronger than mine. Ice Dragon raised his head and looked at the god of the divine kingdom, his eyes filled with amusement. The mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf looked at Ice Dragon. At this moment, the domineering aura and responsibility that Ice Dragon exuded made them look at him in a different light. Qin Feiyong had also come back to his senses. His entire body was covered in cold sweat. The strength of the divine kingdom's god was simply unimaginable. With his current methods, he was no match for the divine kingdom's god. Now you understand the difference between you and the divine kingdom's god. Don't get too full of yourself. You have to continue working hard. I'll give you 1 day. After visiting your families, immediately return to the divine kingdom and complete your mission. Ice Dragon's voice sounded in the minds of Qin Feiyong and the other two. 1 day? Qin Feiyong frowned. How could 1 day be enough? He wanted to use this opportunity to spend more time with his family. Don't go too far. We've fought in the divine kingdom for so many years. Give us at least 1 year to reunite with our families, the mad scientist said telepathically. Do you have the final say, or do I? Ice Dragon's tone was cold. But isn't a day too short? How about we discuss it for half a year? Madman thought. Ice Dragon pondered for a moment and said, 3 days. 3 days at most. If I don't see you back in 3 days, don't blame me for being ruthless. Damn you! Madman cursed in his heart. Let's go. Qin Feiyong sighed inwardly. He turned around and rushed to the front of the fire python, saying, Let's go! All right. The fire python nodded and bowed to the Ice Dragon. Then it immediately led Qin Feiyong and the others away from this dangerous place. Even Qin Feiyong was no match for the ruler of the divine kingdom, which showed how terrifying his strength was. As a guardian, he controlled the rule power of the underworld king's hell. In the eyes of ordinary people, he was the ruler of this world. However, in the face of an existence like the ruler of the divine kingdom, the rule power of the underworld king's hell was meaningless. The second level of the divine sight, the fire python brought Qin Feiyong and the others to the sky above a mountain range. That's right. They didn't stay in the underworld king's hell and went directly to the second level. Whoosh! Only when they arrived at the second level did fire dance, and the others feel relieved. That damn Ice Dragon, he's going too far! Madman roared in anger. What's wrong? Everyone looked at him in confusion. Ice Dragon had saved Qin Feiyong before. Why was he scolding him now? Madman said helplessly, He secretly sent us a message saying that he would only give us 3 days. After 3 days, we must return to the divine kingdom. Only 3 days? The group was stunned. He said that he would only give us 1 day. We had to beg him for 3 days. Don't you think he's going too far? He even wants to control the time we spend with our families. Don't you think he's going too far? Madman was indignant. The group smiled bitterly. What could they do? Who asked Ice Dragon to be stronger than them? 3 days is indeed too short. Looks like we have to change the plan. Qin Feiyong sighed. Why don't we ignore him? White-eyed Wolf asked. He is a person who does what he says. If we ignore him, It's not only us who will suffer, but also our families. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Everyone fell silent. They finally came back and they only had 3 days. What could they do? Forget it. It's useless to be angry. Lin Yi waved her hand, looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Brother Feiyang, how strong is this divine kingdom's dominator? Even your 3,000 incarnations are not his opponent? When Qin Feiyang heard this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. If he knew how strong the divine kingdom's dominator was, he wouldn't challenge the other party this time. Sigh. It seems that we were too optimistic before. Madman sighed. White-eyed Wolf also nodded. When it came to the divine kingdom's dominator, they were all worried. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said with a smile, Although this challenge is a bit self-humiliating, it's a good thing for us. A good thing? Madman and White-eyed Wolf were taken aback. Yes, because of this challenge, we have a preliminary understanding of the divine kingdom's dominator's strength. Furthermore, through this lesson, we've realized our own inadequacies. Furthermore, we should put away our contempt for the Scandinavian nation. Qin Feiyang said, That's true. If we don't know the strength of the divine kingdom's dominator in advance, we don't know how strong we will become in the end. When we face him, we will definitely suffer a great loss. Madman and White-eyed Wolf nodded. Therefore, one must not be blinded by victory. One must always remain calm and deal with all unknown possibilities. But it's really surprising that this person also mastered the law of life and death. Li Feng frowned. He seemed to have said before that if one wants to become a true dominator, the first condition is to comprehend the law of life and death. Listening to what he said, is it possible that every dominator in the world has mastered the law of life and death? Lin Yi looked at them suspiciously. Maybe. Qin Feiyang nodded. Now, the law of life and death was no longer important. The important thing was that the divine kingdom's dominator's final means was simply unheard of. Wait. Suddenly, Madman stretched out his hand, interrupted everyone's thoughts, and said in surprise, The divine kingdom's dominator seems to have mentioned a realm before. Is there a new realm above the dominator realm? A new realm. Qin Feiyang and others looked at each other, their eyes full of surprise. Why don't we ask Ice Dragon? His attitude towards us is still okay. As long as we humbly ask him for advice, he should not embarrass us. White-eyed Wolf said cautiously. His attitude is still okay. Brother Wolf, are you talking in your sleep? If it's really possible, why would he only give us 3 days? Madman was speechless. That's another matter. He did save little Qinzi before. White-eyed Wolf waved his hand. Madman pursed his lips. This, Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and waved his hand. Let's not understand these things first, lest everyone bite off more than they can chew. The top priority is to integrate all the ultimate mysteries first. It makes sense. Madman nodded. If everyone knew that there might be a new realm above the Dominator realm, it was inevitable that some people would be impetuous. Moreover, we don't need to inquire about this matter, because even if we humbly ask him for advice, he may not tell us. But Long Qin and Long Qin are different. They are ice dragons' biological children. If we let them inquire, the success rate will definitely be higher than us. Qin Feiyang said, Yes, we can let them go. Madman patted his head, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, How about I go to the dragons now and tell Long Chen and Long Qin about this matter first? Anyway, with the badge and the space-time tunnel, it would only take a short time to come and go. Wait, but at this time, Fire Python was stunned. He closed his eyes and carefully sensed for a while. Looking at Qin Feiyang and the other two, he said with a smile, You don't need to go. The siblings have already entered hell. They have already entered hell? The three were stunned. Yes, they also know that the dominator of the Divine Kingdom was brought to hell by Ice Dragon and Small Beast. This time, They finally returned to the Sky Cloud realm. They will definitely come to Hell to visit Ice Dragon. The white-eyed wolf patted its head in realization. It bared its teeth at the fire python and said, "Bring them here." This is not good. Fire Python was a little scared, because the siblings were the children of Ice Dragon. He, as a guardian, was given by Ice Dragon and Small Beast. How could he dare to bring them to the second floor without the consent of the siblings? "What are you afraid of? We are here," White-Eyed Wolf comforted. This, Fire Python looked at Qin Feiyong. "It's okay." Qin Feiyong smiled slightly. "Okay." Fire Python nodded. With a turn of its claws, a man and a woman appeared in the void next to it. Who else could it be but Long Qin and Long Qin? Suddenly being brought to the second floor by Fire Python, the siblings were a little stunned. And when they saw Qin Feiyong and the others, the siblings were stunned again. Then, when they saw Fire Python with Qin Feiyong and the others, they suddenly realized. Long Qin looked at Qin Feiyong and the others and pursed his lips. "I thought it was some reckless person who wanted to harm us. It turns out that you guys are behind this. With your identity and status, who dares to harm you?" Qin Feiyong shook his head and laughed. Long Qin asked, "Are you going back to the Great Qin?" "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded and asked, "Are you here to visit Father?" "Otherwise, why would we come to the Nether King's Hell?" Long Qin smiled and looked at Fire Python. "We were just looking for you. You are the guardian of the Nether King's Hell. You must know where my father is now. I hope you can take us there." His tone was very gentle and his attitude was very polite. "I know." Fire Python nodded and hesitated. But what?" The siblings were shocked. Did something happen to their father? "Don't be nervous. Ice Dragon is doing very well now. We have seen him before, but now he is with the ruler of the Divine Kingdom. I am afraid it is not the time to see him." Lunatic said, "You have already been there? Did you have a conflict with him?" Long Qin asked worriedly. End of chapter. Chapter 43-46. I didn't have any conflict with your father, but with the ruler of the Divine Kingdom. As the madman spoke, he turned to look at Qin Feiyong. His face was filled with ridicule. "You're still gloating?" Qin Feiyong said with a dark face. "If you and the white-eyed wolf hadn't provoked me, would I have fought with him?" "What? You had a fight with the ruler of the Divine Kingdom?" Long Qin and Long Qin were surprised. "Is this for real?" "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded with a wry smile. "What was the result?" Long Qin's face was full of curiosity. "The result?" Qin Feiyong shook his head and sighed. "I was beaten to the point that I couldn't fight back. If it weren't for your father, I would have died in his hands." "It can't be." The brother and sister looked at each other. With Qin Feiyong's current strength, he was beaten to the point that he couldn't fight back? "You didn't activate the 3,000 incarnations?" Long Qin recovered and asked. "Yes. Except for the Eye of Heaven, I used all my means, but the ruler of the Divine Kingdom used only one move to completely suppress me." Recalling the situation at that time, Qin Feiyong couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. "One move?" Long Qin was stunned when he heard this. What kind of means could suppress Qin Feiyong's 3,000 incarnations with just one move? This move seems to have evolved from the law of death, but we have never seen it before. So now we are all suspecting that there may be a new realm above the ruler realm. Originally, I wanted to find you and ask you to help me investigate it. After all, it's easier to talk to you in front of the Ice Dragon. But we didn't expect you to come to the Nether King's Hell, so we asked Brother Hua to bring you here." Qin Feiyong said. "So that's how it is. A new realm," the brother and sister murmured. They didn't expect to find a new world when they returned to the sky cloud realm. How about this? Qin Feiyang pondered for a while, then looked at the fire python and said, Brother Fire, it's not appropriate for them to meet the ice dragon directly. After you send us off, go to the Nether King's Hell alone and bring the ice dragon here. Let them reunite here. All right. The fire python nodded. The white-eyed wolf turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, Then, should we go to the ancient realm first, or the great Qin Empire first? Since it's on the way, I'll definitely go to the ancient realm first. Madman said without hesitation. Li Feng looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I also want to return to the ancient world first, because it had been many years since he had gone back to the village to pay respects to the dead. I know you all want to go back, but now we only have 3 days. I have to make arrangements in advance, White-Eyed Wolf said in distress. 3 days? What do you mean? Long Qin looked at the three of them suspiciously. Isn't it because of your father? He only gave us 3 days to be reunited with our families. White-Eyed Wolf snorted coldly. Long Qin frowned and looked at Qin Feiyang and the others. Wait a moment, I'll go talk to him. This is really too unreasonable. Don't. If we annoy him later, we won't even have 3 days. White-Eyed Wolf hurriedly stopped him. But Long Qin frowned. Madman shook his head and sighed. I know you mean well, but we really can't afford to offend your father. If we can't afford to offend him, can't we just avoid him? 3 days it is. Let's go to the ancient realm first and see Master, Qin Feiyang said. He had 2 masters. One was Yi Zhong of the ancient realm, and the other was the Deputy Alliance Master of the Sky Cloud realm. Although his current strength had far surpassed the 2 of them, he couldn't forget his roots. Looking at Old Man Yi is fake. Missing Shangguan Qiu is the real deal. White-Eyed Wolf looked at Qin Feiyang playfully. Yes, this Shangguan Qiu has a special liking for you. We haven't seen each other for so many years. Do you miss me? Madman slapped his head and couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang playfully. Shangguan Qiu. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly and said helplessly, Can you guys stop joking? How did he make these 2 bad friends? It was completely an attitude of wanting to see the world in chaos. Suddenly, Fire Python said, There's something I forgot to tell you. What is it? Qin Feiyang and the others were suspicious. Fire Python smiled. There's a woman named Wang Yu. Not long after you guys returned to the Sky Cloud realm. She came to the Divine Ruins and asked me to help send her to the Ancient Realm. Wang Yu. She went to the Ancient Realm. White-Eyed Wolf was stunned. Yes. Fire Python nodded. Little Qin Zi, why did she go to the Ancient Realm? White-Eyed Wolf looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang and asked. How would I know? Qin Feiyang was speechless. He hadn't been in the Great Qin all these years. Could it be that she hasn't given up on you? Is that why she went to find you? White-Eyed Wolf muttered. Qin Feiyang's veins were bulging. He kicked him and said angrily, I'm telling you, don't talk nonsense like this in the future. Back then, in order to enlighten Wang Yu, he had spent a lot of effort to appease her. He didn't want their relationship to become complicated because of some nonsense. TCH, you don't know how lucky you are. If it were me, White-Eyed Wolf looked disdainfully at Qin Feiyang, but before he finished speaking, he felt a cold gaze. He quickly looked at Fire Dance and said with an embarrassed smile, My dear wife, I'm just talking nonsense. Don't take it seriously. The corner of Fire Dance's mouth twitched slightly. She didn't say anything. Was there a need to be so afraid of her? Long Qin, who was standing beside Long Qin, looked at White-Eyed Wolf and Fire Dance with a trace of disappointment in his eyes. Qin Feiyang glanced at Long Qin, then looked at Fire Python and said with a smile, Brother Fire, I'll have to trouble you again. But before that, let me give you a gift. A gift? Fire Python was stunned. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and ultimate profundity inheritances appeared one after another. Apart from the laws of light and darkness and the laws of life and death, there were ultimate profundities of all the laws, including the ordinary laws. This Fire Python was stunned. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, "Don't say thank you. There's no need for that between brothers." Fire Python didn't even think of saying thank you, because he didn't plan to accept it at all. After all, this gift was too precious. Rather than giving it to him, it was better to give it to someone with a better future. However, seeing that Qin Feiyong's attitude and tone were very firm, he knew that he definitely couldn't refuse. Therefore, he put it away with a clear conscience. As Qin Feiyong said, they were all brothers. If he still refused, it would seem too pretentious. Immediately, Fire Python turned to look at Long Qin and his sister and said respectfully, "Then I'll send them to the ancient realm first. Please wait for a moment." "Okay." Long Qin smiled slightly. Fire Python immediately left with Qin Feiyong and the others. Long Qin watched the group leave, then turned to Long Qin and asked, "Brother, why do you think father did this? Isn't he too overbearing?" Long Qin was slightly stunned and looked at his sister in front of him. This little sister's reaction seemed to be a bit too big. "Why are you looking at me?" Long Qin was suspicious. Long Qin asked seriously, "Little sister, tell me honestly, do you have feelings for the white-eyed wolf?" Ah, Long Qin didn't expect that Long Qin would suddenly ask this question. Caught off guard, she didn't know how to answer at all. She looked a little angry, and her cheeks were a little red. Alas! Long Qin sighed secretly. Although Long Qin didn't answer, Long Qin's reaction was enough to explain everything. It was really an ill-fated relationship. There were so many people. Why did she fall for the white-eyed wolf? The reason why father only gave them 3 days, I think it should be because he was worried that they would relax after spending too much time with their family, and at the same time, it would delay their cultivation. Long Qin guessed. Even so, it's not necessary to give them only 3 days. Long Qin said, "The strength of the ruler of the divine kingdom is beyond our imagination. As long as we make a wrong move, we will end up with a broken body. So at this time we can't relax at all. 3 days is indeed a short time, but we can do a lot of things." Long Qin smiled slightly. Ancient world, northern region, land of death. It was as dark as ever, and the air was filled with a tragic aura. Back then, Qin Feiyong met the fire lotus here. It was also here that he had a dispute with Gui Sweki's family. Qin Feiyong turned his head to look at Frenzy and the others and said, "I will only stay in the ancient world for 1 day. You have to arrange your time well." "Okay." Frenzy nodded and said angrily, "That damn ice dragon, when I become stronger, I will definitely press him to the ground and rub his skin. Remember to call me when the time comes." White-eyed wolf also said, "Call you?" Frenzy and Qin Feiyong looked at each other. "Forget it. Who knows? I might be your father-in-law in the future. Then I will go directly to the divine land. Shall we meet here tomorrow morning?" Li Feng looked at Qin Feiyong and the others and asked, "Okay." Qin Feiyong nodded. Li Feng immediately opened a time passage and left. "Let's go too." Frenzy also opened a time passage and pulled Zhuo Shaoxian in. "Where are we going?" Zhuo Shaoxian was puzzled. Frenzy said, "Didn't I tell you before? There is an old man who has been helping me. He is one of the guardians of the ancient world. This time we must visit him." "Then, when are we going to pay respects to your adoptive father and your grandfather?" Zhuo Shaoxian asked. Frenzy's grandfather was naturally the Grand Elder of the Ninth Heaven Palace. Although they were not related by blood, they had a deep relationship. "We will go after visiting that old man." Along with the conversation, the two gradually disappeared. Lin Yi turned to look at Qin Feiyong and smiled. "Brother Feiyong, I will also visit Master." Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Lin Yi's master was the guardian of the northern region. He used to be a great help to them, with Li Feng, Frenzy, Zhuo Xiaoxian, and Lin Yi leaving one after another. Only Qin Feiyang, White-Eyed Wolf, Fire Dance, and Mu Qing were left here. White-Eyed Wolf looked at Qin Feiyang with flickering eyes and suddenly bared his teeth. Sister Feng, I will take you around and meet some old friends. Little Qin Zi, although there are many girls waiting for you, remember to control yourself and meet at the Ninth Heaven Palace at night. Before leaving, White-Eyed Wolf left such a sentence, which almost made Qin Feiyang go berserk. End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.